All right. Hello and welcome everybody to the inaugural DiamondCentric MLB trade rumor Extravapalooza, baby. It is the MLB trade deadline. We are so happy to be here with everybody talking about all the action. There has been an absolute flurry of moves so far. We are ready. I like the sounds of that. That was my co-host for today's episode.
The Cubs just came out what they gave up for Zephyr.
Oh, here we go. Okay, let me do some introductions here first. My co-host for today's episode is Mr. Mitch Widmeier. He's known for his work over at Northside Baseball. We are super happy to have him here today. Mitch, how you feeling?
I'll be feeling better if the Cubs add another starter here before the deadline comes and goes. But
well, hey,
we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see what happens. They've certainly been included in plenty of rumors. Also joining us for right now with the Cubs portion of our podcast, we have Mr. Jason Ross. What's going on, Jason?
Doing well. Lou, how you doing today?
I'm very excited for this whole thing. And of course, we have Mr. Corey Sparks here as well. Corey, how you doing?
Hey, doing good, Lou. Yeah, next hour and 56 minutes is going to be pretty chaotic here. So excited to count the clock down with you guys.
Can't wait. Absolutely can't wait. For those who aren't familiar, today is the MLB trade deadline at 5 p.m. Central Time. That is 6 p.m. Eastern. That is when the buzzer beaters will need to be made. We've seen a flurry of moves so far, but of course, we are here to talk about some Cubs for the first few minutes of this podcast. If you're watching this show live, please let us know. Leave us a comment. Let us know, who do you want to see the Cubs go after before the 5 p.m. Central deadline here. They have been included in so many different trades so far. Corey, let's start with you here. What has excited you most in regards to the Chicago Cubs on deadline day?
Yeah, I think Gausman was the satisfying one, right? I was a big Robbie Ray guy going into the deadline. Obviously, an expiring contract would have been a bit of a steep pay, but you already have a couple southpaws healthy in the rotation. So I'm glad they got Gausman. You have a guy with over 2,000 career strikeouts, 2,000 career innings, and I know they're not playing great baseball right now in Toronto, but people shouldn't forget he was on almost a World Series winning team last year. So anytime you have someone who's been in those high leverage situations, I think you should be pretty excited about it. In general, I'm not a huge prospect hugger, but if there's one guy I don't want to see go, and I'm glad I haven't seen his name pop up on my screen yet, I don't want Josiah Hartshorn going anywhere. So that has me excited that he's still a Cub right now with an hour 54 to go. Anytime you have a switch hitting, powerful, pretty good plate discipline too, outfielder with the knowledge that Seiya and Ian Happ are both on expiring deals, I want him in my big league outfield in a couple of years and hopefully for years beyond that. So happy about Gausman, hoping I don't see Josiah pop up in any deals here.
Fair enough. Hey, you brought up Kevin Gausman. He just seems like such a prototype that people get very excited for at the MLB trade deadline. You know, a veteran who's been there, who's shown some really good stuff in playoff races. I am a writer for Twins Daily, and I was really hoping that he could maybe be shipped off to Minnesota. What specifically excites you about Gausman and the addition to this Chicago Cubs team?
Yeah, he's steady. You know, on the surface level, you see he only has 3 pitches, used to have 4 and kind of took the changeup out of it. But he has an above average extension. So even though that fastball only comes in at like 94, looks a little better than that. I think what excites me most about him is you see a 35-year-old starter and you go, okay, he might be over the hill. The thing is, Gausman's never been a strikeout, high octane, high velocity pitcher. So I think his style of play is sustainable. So that excites me, that I think he's going to play the same quality of baseball we saw from him 10 years ago, right after he was selected 4th overall by the Orioles. And the other thing that excites me is the experience I brought up before. This guy was just on a World Series, almost World Series winning roster. I think that translates over. It's the same reason a lot of us got excited when Craig Counsell came over to the Cubs. He had a lot of experience in playoff baseball. Now we have a guy who was on the starting rotation, wire to wire. He's gone 180 innings almost every year the last 6 years. He's just steady, right? He's not going to strike out 12 guys. He's not going to light up the radar gun at triple digits. But I think his style of play fits someone at his age, and he comes from a winner.
Love it. Jason, how about you? What did you think about the Gausman trade? And especially, what did you think about what the Cubs gave up to bring him into the fold here?
Man, that's an A-plus trade. The Cubs got a pitcher whose F-WAR is on par with Joe Ryan, and they gave up 2 guys with a career. And I'm saying this as somebody who, Mitch, you know, I've talked about Ty Southazine consistently on the podcast.
Yeah.
Like Southazine's like my little fun project this year. They have a combined 7 home runs career. career. Those are two 20 power grade guys. They are bench players at best. They are never going to break in with the Cubs in terms of any sort of significant playing time. And the Cubs got a very, very good.
Do you like the move? Do you like what they gave up? That does seem like a pretty steep price. What are you thinking, Mitch?
Yeah, I know there were a lot of people who were in the corner for Moises Ballesteros, knowing that he goes for a relief pitcher is one thing, but we kind of knew going into this, or at least had an idea from all the reports. And this is something Jason and I alluded to on the podcast. It sounded like going into this, the Cubs were aiming to bring in 3 arms, whether that's 2 starters and a bullpen arm, 2 bullpens and a starter, controllable, not controllable. So it certainly isn't surprising to see them go out and get a relief pitcher, a guy who I believe just pitched against the Brewers either yesterday or Saturday, went in inning and 2/3, didn't give up a run. So there's some familiarity there, like could be pitching in some leverage spots, maybe not like a 9th inning necessarily, but some high leverage spots. You got 7 games against the Brewers left this year, and then whatever you have in the postseason too. So yeah, it might be a steep price for a bullpen piece, but we kind of knew going into this, the Cubs are going to add arms and a plethora of them, and we've seen them add 3 so far, and maybe there's more coming down the barrel with that too.
I love it. We also have heard the Cubs being rumored in the mix for maybe Reed Detmers. I think that there's been some kind of mixed reporting there. Not sure exactly where that one's going. What would you think about
that one's happening?
Don't think it's happening. You think it's X'd out. How do you guys feel about even just like the big game hunting for somebody like Reed Detmers, who's under club control for a couple of years? Would you like to see them pull the trigger on something like that, or would you guys be more focused on kind of the immediate 2026 playoff push right here?
The Chicago Cubs have so many free agents next year that they have to do 2027 shopping. Now, I'll say this. I do not think that they will be getting anybody else like Major, is my guess. The Braxton Garrett and Ryan Zefferson, I think, are your 2027 kind of shopping right there. Braxton Garrett is a nice Tyler Zombro project. Put him down to AAA, let Zombro work his magic, and then maybe see what you got next year from him. Zefferson is controlled till 2030. But they did need to get some shopping done. I think they did. I would expect another rental starter. Clay Holmes would be my guess. And if they go Clay Holmes, Kevin Gausman, Ryan Zefferson, I think you're in a pretty good place for 2026 season. Trading Ballesteros probably opens up the Seiya Suzuki extension there because you'll still have DH and all sorts of options. So I think that's kind of my guess. Would I like them to still go and get like George Kirby? Hell yeah, please go get George Kirby. But I don't think it's. I think we're probably at a point in the day that I wouldn't expect it to happen. I think if they were going to get Reed Detmers, it would have been in the Ryan Zefferson trade. You don't make 2 separate trades in an hour and a half. You make one trade. So I think Detmers is dead. I think it's probably unlikely they get a controlled starter. I would have liked one. That would have been awesome. But there's always the winter. We saw it last year with Edward Cabrera. They can always cycle back around and get it later if that's the case. So that's kind of where I'm at.
One thing I'll add too about the return package going to the Angels. Jason, you and I have talked multiple times about Ballesteros, and you love the bat, you love what he brings, but where does he fit in long term as a guy who he's not going to be an everyday catcher? Could you throw him behind the plate for 30 to 40, 45 games, maybe DH first? Like there's just, they have an overload at certain spots, and it was hard to see like where does he, even if the bat turns out to be pretty damn good, like where does Ballesteros fit in long term? Now that doesn't mean you just throw him to the side for next to nothing, but what they're getting from the Angels is not next to nothing. So I guess I can't say I'm shocked to see Ballesteros being sent out in a return package at the deadline here.
And I think just to kind of pile on to what Mitch said there, one tea leaf that I read today, and this is just from somebody who's looking at everything out there, is that the Cubs seem to draw a hard line in the sand on Owen Ayers in this trade. That was kind of like the line. And then it was, well, if we're going to trade Owen Ayers, a lot of the reporting was that the Cubs wanted to get another young catcher in the system somewhere. Well, why would you want another young catcher in the system if you had Moises Ballesteros, right? And I think the answer to that is that the Cubs, I think that tells you how the Cubs feel about his defense. I think we've been sitting here for years trying to figure out, like, do the Cubs think Moises Ballesteros is a catcher? And I think today they told you that Moises Ballesteros is not a catcher to them. And
what grade would you give them for their moves so far? Corey, let's start with you. What is your scorecard? What is your grade for them? And what would it take for them to really push that grade up?
Yeah, if we stop here, I think I'm still on the pipe dream. I want a controllable starter. We all love Justin Steele, but we haven't seen the version we've wanted out of him over the course of the last couple of years because he hasn't been available, right? And even his last time that he was healthy, it was an off year to start. Edward Cabrera, we took a risk in the Owen Casey trade getting him because he's gone 100 innings one time in the first 5 years, and lo and behold, he's hurt again and really struggled the last couple of weeks before he went out. I want to see a controllable arm. I want to see someone who's on the books this year, at least on the books next year. And if we get someone on their rookie deal still, maybe going into 2028, I just want a little more stability. I don't know what the long-term version of the rotation looks like right now. So I would go B+. I'm really, really happy with Gausman. We needed to address 2026 because starting pitchers and our bullpen, pitching staff in general has been falling like flies. And I think to other people's point, right, you're trading people who don't play actual positions. Like Ballesteros is every bit of a DH to its prototype. And I think that does show the hand with guys like Miguel Amaya, guys like Owen Ayers, and even guys like Seiya Suzuki on the expiring contract. But to put it over the top, go get me like a Joe Ryan. Go get me one controllable arm, even if someone's going into arbitration where you can work it out within the next couple of years. Because I frankly don't know what the back end of this rotation looks like next year, the year after, and the year after that.
Fair enough. Jason, same question. What grade would you give them so far if this were to be it? And what would you need to see to bump that grade up?
B, and they need a pitcher still.
Okay.
I mean, like if you want like an A+, yeah, get a controlled pitcher. I don't think it's going to happen at this point. I think if it was going to happen, it would have happened already. I do think they'll probably still work those phones. If you wanted a prediction, I said Clay Holmes, and I like Clay Holmes still. That just makes too much sense. And if the Cubs get Clay Holmes and they get Kevin Gausman and they add that to a playoff rotation of Shota and Boyd, that's a playoff rotation that you can go up against teams. Is it Shohei? Is it Scooble? No, it's not. But also like the Dodgers are all sorts of injured up right now. And I think we probably don't recognize like how like kind of like bubblegum and like tape their rotation is in many ways with Snell and Glasnow and Shohei, and like Roki Sasaki is sometimes good and sometimes terrible. Like they're in a weird spot. So yeah, it's not going to compete with the Dodgers on paper. I think it's good enough. Zephyr and just to kind of like, I think that there's some people, and I think I did this right away as well, because like I was so amped up for like Detmers. But like, let me read you a couple of numbers on Jefferson over his last 16 innings. And this goes back to June 23rd. He has a 46% strikeout rate, a 6.3 walk rate, a 0.175 average against. He has a 53 FIP minus. He has a 2.22 FIP. This is a dude who, like, that's Mason Miller territory that he's done over the last 16 innings. Now, is he going to remain that controlled on the mound? I don't know. We'll have to see. But it does look like something has clicked. That's 4 walks in 16 innings, 1 walk in the last 10. So, like, you put, like, a killer back there with the bullpen that they have coming back. Steele, Brown, who are probably going to go into the bullpen, Palencia, Webb, Zephyr. Like, that is a game right there in the playoffs. Like, that is, you can find 7 to 9 innings with those guys right there. So I think it's a B. You get me Clay Holmes, I'm probably at A-. If Clay Holmes is instead like George Kirby, it's an A+. That's kind of where I'm at with it.
I love it. Hey, that's a lot of fun. That's a good blueprint for a team that's already looking pretty nasty in the Chicago Cubs. You mentioned a prediction of Clay Holmes. Corey, do you want to put any sort of prediction on what's going to happen the rest of the deadline here for the Chicago Cubs before we take off?
I'd be really good with Holmes, right? Used to be a lockdown reliever, had the transition over to a starter with the Mets a couple of years ago. He's on a clear seller. I'll steal Holmes here. I'd be very, very okay if he joined the rotation through the back end of this season, put him on a competing team, and hopefully get him into a pennant race here.
I love it. Mitch, any final thoughts on the Chicago Cubs? Of course, if any deal happens, we'd be happy to bring Jason and Corey back. But anything else you want to bring up while you got your guys here?
No, sometimes I hate when Jason and I agree so much because I like, different takes. But when you said letter grade and I was thinking about it, and I think Corey was kind of in lockstep too. Like I'm right around like a B. Like, I'm not over the moon, but I'm like, yeah, I'm satisfied with some of the stuff they've done so far. The Gausman thing was a nice table setter to kind of get things going. You know, if they started with the Braxton Garrett trade and that was the first move, I would have been like, what the hell's going on here? But I think kind of like, and it's not them appealing to the masses, but it kind of accomplished that by starting with the Gausman move and then the 2 to follow up. We knew they were going to get arms. We knew they were going to go after arms, and that's what they've done so far. So yeah, I'm right at a B. If they go out and they get a Clay Holmes or something like that, even though it's a rental arm, I'd be bumping that grade up even more. So we'll see what happens down the stretch here.
All right. Love to see it. Like we said, this is the end of our Cubs segment, but of course, if something happens, we'd be happy to bring these guys back. I'm hoping for it. Fingers crossed. That'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I hope to see you soon.
Yeah, sounds good, guys. Hey, Corey, Jason, thanks for jumping on. We're going to take you off now, and we're going to transition over to our Brewers segment, who have also been rather exciting here. Brock, how we doing? Brock's the man behind.
Yeah,
he's the
good.
man in the chair here.
Before we pop in with Jake, our Brewers writer, we should check in. The Toronto Blue Jays have traded Dalton Varsho to the Houston Astros, which has implications, obviously, for the Blue Jays, but also the Twins, because the Twins were in talks with the Astros on Trevor Larnach, and it's probably unlikely that the Astros also pursue Larnach, although their outfield's pretty bad, and Dalton Varsho also is pretty bad. But, you know, the Blue Jays continue doing this weird buy sell-off. They obviously traded for Jose Soriano, which is a pretty big bet on their part because Soriano's controlled through the end of the 2028 season, but also there's a chance we have a significant lockout next year. So they could be losing a significant chunk of Soriano's control time, but also maybe that's a pretty good sign that they don't think there's going to be a big lockout. And if some of the owners are telling you there's not going to be a big lockout, you know, maybe this is an indication of it.
I would take that for sure. I would love that to be the development. I guess we haven't really talked too much about that, just the implications of what it means for this trade deadline, that there is still some uncertainty as to how many games will be played next year. I think there's been some general optimism in recent weeks that there's not going to be a cancellation of the whole season. We'll see what happens, but that is still a threat. I mean, these two sides are still very far apart, and if there is a threat of losing some games in the first half, that does affect the trade value for some of these controllable guys, at least guys who maybe are only signed through 2027. Maybe a team would be more apprehensive about giving up a major package, not knowing exactly how many starts they're going to get from them next year. It's going to be something to watch for sure. Like I said, we're going to move over to our Brewers segment here, and we're going to add Mr. Jake McKibben to the stage from Brewer Fanatic. Jake, how you doing, my friend?
I'm doing great. My girlfriend's mom just made me steak tacos. My hair's sitting right, and I'm hoping the lighting is better because Brock is always in my backside about that one. So life's good. Boys, what about you?
You're looking good, man. We're having some fun here. Jealous of the steak tacos for sure. But Jake, are you having some fun today? The Brewers have been involved in some trades too. What have you thought about? Let's talk about Dustin May and Jojo Romero here.
Yeah, I mean, it took a while for it to get going. You were sort of sitting there thinking that the Brewers obviously were looking for starting pitching depth, mostly to protect the rotation as it is now. You know, Miz is going to be exceeding his sort of innings limits from prior years. Harrison's going to be the same, and those are the horses you want for the playoffs. So they want someone they can come in, reliable starter. They can maybe skip a few starts here and there with these guys. Maybe they can do it with Harrison and just IL, mate. That looks like a bruise under your eye there. Oh, it doesn't? Anyway, I'll leave that to the side. But yeah, that's what they were looking for. And it seemed like we'd reached the stage of the day where GMs are knowing that they've got all the options and they're just sitting there waiting and saying, nope, not enough. Nope, not enough. And waiting for people to sort of panic thinking we're not going to get it. The Brewers have had that with Skubal so far. David Stearns would have been a great trade partner in terms of you're looking at Clay Holmes and Luke Weaver. But Stearns really would have needed a win if he was to trade with Milwaukee again. So the turn to the Cardinals was interesting. But it's two pitchers who are I'm a bit of a fan of. Dustin May, I love an East-West Arsenal. You know, it's the guy who throws sweepers going one way and the sinkers moving 15 inches the other. That's fun. He's got a good four-seam fastball. And he locates most of his arsenal really well. He doesn't overpower you with stuff, but he's got 5-6 different pitches. The changeup drops off the table. and his cutter is legit. And I think the Brewers are going to have a lot of fun with that pitch. The guy's got a 3.14 FIP this year, which is usually pretty indicative of how you're sort of playing. And I think that matches up with certainly what the Brewers have seen when they faced Dustin May this year. He nearly no-hit them back in May or June and just looked untouchable. The type of dude who's on his day when he's commanding.
Yep.
Brilliant. So certainly no qualms with that. Romero is fascinating as well. And he's never been, you're seeing a lot of, as a Brewers sort of fan, follower, writer, I've seen the Brewers facing a Jojo Romero quite often. And I've never felt, a guy coming 8th, 9th inning, you're not like, oh no, this game's over. It never quite felt like that with him. I would say I like the sweeper. I don't know if he's got a dominant fastball. He does quite well to keep the ball on the ground, but he's almost the opposite of a Dustin May. He's his surface level stats look great, and then you look under the hood and everything is getting hit hard. And he just seems to have lost command of his pitches a little bit. He's throwing the sinker more than ever because he's just not quite commanding that sweeper. Now, he's coming off the IL probably mid-August. And that's a concern with the Brewers, front office, who have acquired a lot of injured, half-injured players coming off an IL in recent years, and it hasn't worked out once yet. So there is that concern that it's just a curse, but we should have expected something like this at some point. So
we have a comment from Jason here. Jake, do you hate Jojo Romero? The streets are saying that you hate this move, clearly.
I slightly hate his parents for calling him Jojo.
Come on.
Joe is a solid name, right? Why do you need to double up on that? Just Joe Romero. Nice, solid name.
Fair enough.
Anyway, yeah, fair enough. Other than that, I don't hate him, but I don't know if I'm as in love with him as I would like to be. I did a little digging maybe into what's changed for him a little bit this year. The command was definitely a big part. He is throwing that sinker more often than ever, and it's not like he gets swings and misses like 1 every 10 pitches that people actually take a hack at. He has limited contact on it, but almost everything else that a hitter has swung at has had real damage against it, from the sweeper and the occasional changeup. He used to throw the odd knuckle curve as well, if I remember correctly, and the odd four-seam fastball. Those have been lit up, and that's part of the reason why I'd be a bit concerned, certainly for a Brewers team who really like to prioritize establishing a fastball. That might be more of a starters thing. They're more comfortable with relievers throwing a little bit more off speed and breakers, but it's going to be interesting how they try and work with both of these, because Dustin May is Chris Hook and Jim Henderson are going to have a field day with that. He fits the Brewers to a T. It was, I think the other side of this as well is an acute, sorry if I'm absolutely rambling here. I've spent like 20 minutes prepping because I was so excited for this. The return given up is a lot,
massive.
Yeah. Alexander Frias, I think Fangraphs had them recently in their number 42 prospect, because this dude has hit balls as an 18-year-old 117 miles an hour. Light tar power. He's athletic in the box. That swing is pretty smooth. A few too many ground balls at the moment, but if he learns to elevate, you're talking a massive ceiling here. And Ragsdale is the other interesting one, where I think he's been promoted to Biloxi and hit something close to 8 homers in 9 days, something like that, which is weird in AA in the Southern League. That doesn't happen. Recently now, we have seen a few more of those in Biloxi. I think one of those homers was 90 miles an hour, which I'll not rant about it too much, but anybody who hits a home run under 97 miles an hour should just have it struck off the record. Just gone. Just no. But he's been on the up, really athletic center fielder, very, very quick, good bat to ball skills. And he's done a lot of work with his lower half just to sort of simplify that so that he can stay back a little bit more and make sure that ball's going in the air more often. And we've seen huge strides from him this year. He's very capable in center field and has a chance to stick there for the Cardinals. And it's the other side of this is the Brewers, one of the positions they don't have a lot of depth in the minors is in the outfield. And you've traded away one certainly very high upside potential outfielder, and then another one who's a bit closer to the big leagues. But again, was really breaking out. And whether that's I'm breaking out now, but I'm going to hit a bump, or I'm breaking out and I'm continuing to go up, we'll have to wait and see. But it certainly seems like they paid quite a steep price compared to some of the other sort of hauls we've seen going on.
Sure.
Like Kevin Gossman was. My granny might hit a ball harder than the two prospects that got traded for Kevin Gausman. So I'm not really sure how that one works out. But yeah, I mean, what are your guys' sort of surface impressions? Like, did you think this is a nutty?
It was
deal?
a high price.
Like it?
And it's interesting because the Red Sox traded for Adley Rutschman earlier today, and the price on that was incredibly steep. And over the past, 5 to 10 years, I've kind of thought that the fear of trading within the division is kind of diminished, but maybe these two deals do indicate that there is a significant tax still involved if you're trying to acquire within the division, because the Rutschman price was massive. And an interesting deal that kind of fell underneath the radar because of the chaos of today is the kind of quasi-challenge deal that the Brewers made with the Guardians, where the Guardians had Bo Naylor. Naylor's really not been very good for the past couple of years, but he still has, I think, 3 and change years of control remaining. And the Brewers have, for whatever reason, Jake, you can take it from here, have never seemed particularly fond of Craig Yoho. But
yeah.
And it's kind of seems like the Brewers and Guardians just like straight up just challenged each other. It's like, okay, you can have Naylor. I want Yoho, and we're going to see who walks away from this.
Yeah, I mean, there was an interesting aspect to that. Sorry, I'm making sure the mic's on. Cody Hoyer is an interesting arm in his own right. There's an interesting fastball shape. He throws the ball faster. I would say that as over the last few years, I've gained less confidence in relievers with slow fastballs. I think if you're looking to pitch towards the back end of a game, it's almost a must, because eventually it comes unraveled unless you're Brent Suter. So basically, unless you're a dinosaur velociraptor, just no chance. The Braves are going to love him, by the way. But yeah, Craig Yoho is interesting because the fastball is 91, 93 maybe, if he reaches back for a little more. But everything just moves so much, and they just didn't seem to, like some of Pat Murphy's comments. I'm sure Jack and Spencer have talked about this a lot. Is Pat Murphy said, "Oh, his changeup's not a swing and miss pitch," and you looked at it, and people are missing 35% of the time they swing, and you're like, "Well, I'm not sure you've quite got that one right, Pat." But there was minimal trust. They were throwing him out for extra innings, which maybe wasn't his sort of jam. He wasn't great second time up, but that's where a lot of the damage came, and it skewed some numbers against him. But overall, this is a guy whose changeup is electric, if slow, a lot of ground balls, and a lot of swing and miss on it, which is ideal for anybody. Keep the ball on the ground and miss bats. Brewers didn't seem to like that. Hoyer is more in their mold. But as you said, it seems like Bo Naylor is the other side of this. And if you look at the potential upside on both sides, so you have Yoho with his really unique changeup, which it's a screwball at 79 miles an hour. And then you see Bo Naylor, who is actually the antithesis to what the Brewers have gone for in recent years. The Brewers do not air pull. Like they do not buy into this at all. They take guys who can pull the ball in the air and say, see that deeper and go to opposite field, please. But Bo Naylor, his whole strength is I don't hit the ball hard, but I pull it in the air. And that's maybe how you get towards league average production with him. Rave reviews out of Cleveland. He handles a staff quite well. They seem to really enjoy sort of that personality around the clubhouse as well. But he seems more to be this is a trade that they probably could have made in the offseason as well. Just because they're looking more long-term than anything, but also protecting a little bit in case Jefferson Caro's arm doesn't heal up quite enough that they would trust him in September in an emergency role should a William Contreras or Gary Sanchez go down. So it seemed a little bit of an, I'll give you something I'm not too keen on. It's kind of like a lunch trade, where you're like, yeah, I don't like grapes and you don't like apples, so I'll give you my grapes and I'll take your apple, that sort of thing. But it'll be interesting to see how it pans out, because Yoho will change how he's using his pitches in Cleveland. He's already shown that in his debut. And how Hoyer turns out, and more importantly, Bo Naylor fit into this Brewers organization will be fascinating. Bo Naylor, especially next year.
Okay. Going back to this Dustin May and Jojo Romero trade, Mitch, I know you cover a division rival. Does that sort of move kind of scare you as you see the Brewers making a move like this as it pertains to the Cubs kind of chasing them here?
No, I would say it scares me, but like the Brewers are, the cream of the crop already. So I don't think this made them like leaps and bounds better, but like the Cubs are already trying to hunt them down. So it's, I wouldn't say it necessarily pushes things like over the top. It's kind of the Cubs are at a point right now trailing the NL Central where it'd already be pretty hard to imagine them leapfrogging the Brewers based on how consistent Milwaukee is. So I don't know if that it doesn't scare me like, oh my gosh, look who they just got, Romero and Dustin May. It was already like, man, the Brewers are already pretty damn good. Like this is going to be tough for the Cubs to overcome when you talk about the division race. Now, if they would have went out and gotten, a Scooble or something, it would have been like, dang, like, yeah. But even as a Cubs fan and someone who covers them, I'm already of the mindset of like the Brewers are already the cream of the crop. So this trade didn't make it like, oh man, now they're even that much farther ahead of the Cubs. I already have does that make sense? Like totally. I already see the gap. I already see the distance. This didn't necessarily make it like, oh, wow, this really separates things now. I didn't have that takeaway from it.
Well, this is a very classic Brewers move in the sense
Correct.
that, they picked up Romero, who's actually maybe the most un-Brewers-like of the series of moves, but then they pick up Dustin May, which is exactly what you expect from the Brewers. And then they go and pick up Bo Naylor, who's more of, along hopefully the lines of Andrew Vaughn, where it's a rehabilitation project. They, turn him into something, but maybe not this year. It might be a 2027 and 2028 thing. The Brewers are, they never push their chips in. They're always like, okay, we're going to play this over the next year and a half, 2.5 years. What are we going to do as we churn these players, year over year?
Yeah. Jake, while we have you here, I'm going to ask you the same question that I asked our Cubs contributors. If the Brewers were to be done making moves for the rest of the day here, what letter grade would you give them? And what would need to happen for you to bump that grade up?
I mean, it's a B. They've addressed, if I take away what they traded away in sort of prospect capital and potentially rising prospect capital, I say they've addressed their needs. They've got an arm who's comfortable at the back end of the bullpen, and I'm really curious what they do with him. But I think, as Brock said, Dustin May is everything they'd have wanted and more. His arsenal just fits the Brewers. I think he's going to fit right in. So I would say a B from that perspective. I think if you're going to get that level up, the one thing the Brewers really needed at the moment is power. And that's the one thing that would have maybe scared rivals a little bit more. But there wasn't a whole lot of that out there. There was rumors Randy Arozarena might have been available from Seattle, and then they traded for Taylor Ward. Does that mean they're getting rid of someone, or they're just bulking up? How does that look? But someone like an Arozarena coming in would have changed the picture for me and said, oh no, this is a step up sort of grade. But I think they've done the needful, would be the way I'd put it.
Okay, fair enough. Well, Jake, I'm sure that we'll have you jump back in if the Brewers are to make any sort of surprise move between now and the rest of the deadline here. But thank you so much for jumping on the call. We really appreciate it. Everybody, please go check out Jake's work over at Brewer Fanatic. For right now, I think we should probably jump on in, and we should do a quick little look at the rumor mill and see what's been going on around town. Brock, anything to report off the top of your head? Otherwise, I'll jump into the rumor mill here.
No, it's just the closing of a lot of deals, like the Zephyr deal. There's just a lot of finishing up some of the stuff that had started, an hour or so ago, which is really interesting. We're nearing, just a little more than an hour, and it's actually slowed down quite a bit in the past hour and a half over what we saw in mid-morning. So I think we could probably jump on over to Blue Jays. I'm probably going to pop out for a couple minutes and be back in a little bit.
Let's do it. And with that said, we're going to bring in our friend Jesse. Whoa, I'm going to add him to the stage here. Jesse from Jays Center. Oh, he keeps getting kicked off the call. Unbelievable. Jesse, it has been a busy day for the Blue Jays here. It's been a busy, 24 hours. How are you feeling about where the club is at? What's going through your mind right now?
Gentlemen, first of all, great to be here. It's a great day to be a Toronto Blue Jays fan. I can't imagine you guys had the Toronto Blue Jays as the most active or probably talked about team on the bingo card this trade deadline. But it's very interesting for a team that was supposed to be known as sellers coming into this trade deadline. We ended up sending away our top prospect, and depending on what you think between him and Zaire Hope of the Dodgers, maybe the best prospect traded so far this trade deadline. It's been a very interesting 24 hours for the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we talked about just a few minutes ago, it sounds like Dalton Varsho is on his way to Houston. What do you think about that move specifically?
Well, first of all, the Toronto Blue Jays are in Houston tonight, so you get one of those rare trades where the guy just has to walk right across the diamond. So I've always loved that when that happens around the trade deadline. The getting Spencer Arrighetti is very interesting because the Blue Jays really had a choice. They could have chosen to get a prospect that they might like, that their scouts can develop and turn something into, or they can go with the guy who's already shown, hey, he can be effective in the major leagues. And, it's been a bit up and down. He can't really throw strikes that much, but he has had these stretches of good play, and getting that for 2 months of a guy that Brock described was not very good at all this season is a hell of a get for the Toronto Blue Jays. So very interesting move here.
Yeah, we should bring this up too. And this actually, Mitch, this involves the Chicago Cubs, that the Blue Jays, it sounds like, are getting calls on Jose Soriano already, that they might, consider flipping him, or at least that they're getting calls on him. Chicago, the Cubs are the only team that were, specifically linked to Soriano before he was traded to the Blue Jays. Let's start with you, Jesse. How shocking would it be to see them flip Soriano at this point? And depending on the package, would you be excited by that? Or were you more thrilled with the idea of having Soriano in Stowe here for the next year or two?
Yeah, I think if the Blue Jays are going to flip Jose Soriano here, they've got to get a return that is significantly better than what they just sent to the Angels to even make it worth their while here, right? So the Blue Jays have built their trade deadline with a goal to compete again in 2027. So unless the Cubs are going to give us pieces that can help us do exactly that, I'd be very shocked to see the Blue Jays do anything here involve moving Jose Soriano.
Mitch, how would you feel about that, to learn that Soriano is still on the trade market? And would you want to see the Cubs make a move for him?
Yeah, I mean, controllable starter is certainly at the top of the checklist, and they got Kevin Gossman, who, checks the starter box, but not the controllable part of things. You've already done business with Toronto, so I always like the familiarity part of this. Like when the Cubs went and acquired David Peterson, what was like a month ago, it was like, well, you've already, gotten something done with the Mets. So if you call him up for Clay Holmes now, like there's already, that familiarity. It's hard to see kind of with what Jesse's saying, like you don't typically see a team trade for someone and then quickly just flip them like that. So it'd be hard to see that coming to fruition. But from a Cubs perspective specifically, I know there's a lot of fans who still want them to go out and add another starter, and perhaps one that's controllable. So he would seemingly check a lot of those boxes. I don't see it'd be pretty surprising to see that, I think.
Of course. But hey, I'm always down for some surprises.
Yeah, some chaos. Yeah,
could be fun. Could be in the mix here. Jesse, let's go back to Gossman here with this trade. What did you think about the return that went back to the Blue Jays in that swap?
Yeah,
what is the most exciting?
Well, it's a very Blue Jays heavy prospect package that they return. If you look at some of the players the Blue Jays seem to value, it's these guys who can run well, play good defense, make a ton of contact, and can't hit worth power at all. And we saw the Blue Jays in the draft target a lot of these players recently. So it almost comes as no surprise that this is exactly the type of prospects that the Blue Jays went for here. I do like that they did get a center fielder that was close to Major League ready, because as we just saw, Dalton Varsho got traded. Miles Straw is a very trendy candidate to get traded here next. And Nathan Lucas can stand in center field, I'm sure, but the Blue Jays' best outfield prospects are still quite a ways away. So I think they really liked Bateman and really wanted to get this guy in their system. And I think the Blue Jays believe that they can add power to a bunch of their prospects. Like that's a skill they can train by increasing bat speed and whatnot, whereas contact ability isn't necessarily something they can do. So I think they're betting on that from their player development system and targeting this type of player. So we will see. It would have been nice to get more for a guy like Kevin Gausman, who's meant so much for this franchise over the past 5 years, but the price for rentals has, not everybody can be Terry Skubal. So I understand what they got here. And even if the Blue Jays want a little bit more, I think they did pretty good, all things considered.
Yeah, Jesse. So just in general here, obviously you would have to classify this season as disappointing at the very least for the Blue Jays after what a thrilling, push in the playoffs, all the way to Game 7 of the World Series, heartbreaking loss there. Are you surprised to see the position that they're in at this trade deadline? Is this something that you predicted coming into this season, or where on the likelihood scale would you put this outcome?
I mean, whenever you get to Game 7 of the World Series and you then add a potential Cy Young Award winner to the start of your rotation, it's hard to see this coming this far down as that came for the Toronto Blue Jays. Look, they probably weren't as good as they were last year, and they're probably not as bad as they are this year. Yeah. The Blue Jays found themselves 4.5 games out. The playoff odds are like around 5%. You kind of have to do what every team does here. The main thing with the team, as I'm sure we all know, is this team goes as far as Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is going to take them. And I don't know if you know, he has not been taking this team very far this season. So the Blue Jays are betting here that they can rebuild again in 2027, that this is just a blip, that they can get everything going again, all systems go. And the actions they've done this trade deadline have shown that. And unfortunately, it did mean letting go of some pieces that have meant so much to the core over the past half decade.
Are you on board with that philosophy of like, hey, we're gonna soft sell a little bit here? Yes, the Gausman trades things. Yes, the Varsho trades things a little bit. But this team, do you think that there's still a foundation that they could be successful in 2027 if they make, some minor moves, some minor tweaks here at the deadline, and then go into the offseason with some maybe fresh ideas?
I think you have to try it, right? Anytime you sign Dylan Cease to a 7-year deal, you sign Vlad for $500 million, you're kind of committing that you are in win now mode for the length of that contract. So I can see how the Blue Jays will think that. They do need a lot more help than what they've currently got. The two pitchers they've got in Soriano and Spencer Arrighetti are nice touches. Blue Jays' biggest issue has been their offense, and getting Anthony Santander, Addison Barger back next year will help with that. It's an interesting decision, but I do like that the Blue Jays are trying to go for it. Watching baseball all the time is way more fun when your team is trying to win. So I respect that. It's a risky move and it might not pay off, but I give the Blue Jays front office credit for giving it a shot to try to make this happen.
Very cool. Mitch, you want to chime in here?
I was just following along with others. The Cubs made another trade.
Let's hear it. Should we get some breaking news music in here? I don't know. What do we got?
And it is not for Jose Soriano.
No Jose Soriano. Okay.
John Heyman reporting that Clay Holmes and Tyrone Taylor coming to the Cubs for one of the Cubs' top prospects, Jefferson Rojas.
Interesting.
So they do get another starting arm in Clay Holmes. You get some depth in the outfield. I know when Jason was on, we were saying like we'd probably chalk this up as a B trade deadline so far for the Cubs. Like, good, but can you add one more arm? And they do that with Clay Holmes, who I believe is a rental, not a controllable arm. But now you're looking at somewhat of a revamped rotation. I don't think Braxton Garrett certainly is not going to be a part of that, but you talk about Kevin Gausman and Clay Holmes coming into the picture, and then you get the relief option as well in a separate trade. So a very busy deadline. And I think, kind of good timing. They make another trade for a starting arm because Jesse's up here now, and I know he can shine even more light on what exactly the Cubs are getting with Kevin Gausman, even though that trade was yesterday. Certainly getting a guy with a lot of experience, doesn't walk a lot of hitters. I think he'll kind of fit into what the Cubs want to do. Certainly not, a high velocity with the fastball kind of arm, but he kind of plays well. He's just like a steady presence. And the one thing the Cubs have had, I think, Jesse, you could put a light on this specifically. The Cubs have had so many injuries, rotation-wise and bullpen-wise, and Kevin Gausman, if one of the best abilities is durability, he certainly brings that to the table.
Yeah, he sure does. I just want to give a shout-out to Tyrone Taylor, who was one player who hit a home run into the fifth deck of Rogers Center this year. So I bet he didn't have Tyrone Taylor on the list of one of those people who could do that. So shout out to him. Hope he has a good time in with the Cubs. And with Kevin Gausman, look, he's going to anchor the Cubs rotation. I will add a bit of a caveat though here. Like, he's got a lot of innings under his belt. I think he threw the most pitches, faced the most batters out of anybody in Major League Baseball last year. 35 years old. You know, the splitter isn't moving necessarily as much. He does have an ERA north of 5 over I think since June. So a little bit of buyer beware, I suppose, but you're getting so much more intangibles with Kevin Gausman there. He's going to be good. He's going to be effective. The FIP numbers, the XFIP, all are better than what his ERA has said. So he's going to be loved in Chicago, just like he was loved here in Toronto. Don't have to worry too much.
Mitch, just real quick while we're on the topic of this trade, it looks like the big piece going back to the Mets in that move is infielder prospect Jefferson Rojas. He's a 21-year-old at AA. Are you going to miss him? Is this a good price to pay if he is the kind of centerpiece going back in the deal? What is your opinion of this swap, knowing Jefferson Rojas is part of it?
Yeah, I know he was one of the Cubs' top prospects. Kind of can play third, can play short. One thing we've talked about on our weekly podcast with the Cubs, I hate that we're stealing the light from Jesse too with the Blue Jays.
Yes,
So I'm gonna be quick with this. I'm gonna be quick. The one thing we've talked about with some of these prospects like a Jefferson Rojas is you have Alex Bregman locked in for the future at third base, you know, for the next few years. You have Nico Horner locked in at second base. Dansby Swanson's not going anywhere at shortstop. And so a guy like Rojas, you just start to talk about where does he fit in when you talk about long-term plans for the Cubs? It's a guy who I think many would expect to arrive onto the scene by next year. And if that's the case, well, Bregman's, you know, not going anywhere. Dansby not going anywhere. Nico not going anywhere. So it becomes trickier to find the fit. I know there's probably going to be a pocket of the fan base that's upset with parting ways with Jefferson Rojas when you look at what they got in return. But again, the Cubs are trying to, you get a rental arm in Gausman, a rental arm in Clay Holmes. They're trying to load up a little bit for 2026 here with keeping 2027 in the future in mind with some of the other moves that they made. You're parting ways with, on paper, what's a hell of a prospect, but when you talk about long-term fit, that's where it starts to get a little bit more tricky.
Right on. Well, hey, while we still have Jesse here, let's continue on with just a little bit more Blue Jays action, and then we'll get Jason back in here to talk some more about that Cub swap. But Jesse, while you're here, same question I've asked everybody else. What grade would you give the Toronto Blue Jays if they were to make no other deals for the rest of the deadline here? What letter grade would you give them, and what would they need to do for you to bump that up?
I think I'm going to give the Blue Jays a B+, and a lot of that is for creativity in what they've done here. They've been able to sell some of their expiring contracts, and then they've also been able to do what I like to call a little pre-agency, where they trade for players with term that they can get while they're still in their arbitration years. So I really like that. The Blue Jays still have a few moves that I think they can make to really bump it up. George Springer is an expiring contract they still could move on. Shane Bieber is still scheduled to pitch tonight for the Toronto Blue Jays. Plus, there's Max Scherzer still floating around. There are a few other moves the Blue Jays could look to make to really make this trade deadline go up and above to turn that into an A+. But so far, so good. I'm quite satisfied with how the Blue Jays have turned out this deadline.
Okay, we love it. Any specific names that you would be thrilled to see enter the fold for the Toronto Blue Jays that you've just seen, maybe some minor rumors? Of course, you could talk about some of these star players that would make any team better, but any like perfect fits, perfect puzzle pieces for the Toronto Blue Jays going forward here?
I mean, the Blue Jays need offense in the worst way, particularly some power bats. I've been dreaming about Ellie De La Cruz for a long time. It's not going to happen, but it would be sure nice to see in Blue Jays blue. I don't have a name off the top of my head. I really thought Nick Lodolo could be a good fit here if the Reds were thinking of doing something like that, but they went with Soriano instead, so I like that. Overall, I think they've done a pretty good job here. Let's not forget, too, they've added Jameson Taillon from the Cubs and a very good player and cash for cash trade. Gotta love that. And then we just made a small move getting Josh Smith from the Rangers as well. So there's that move as well. The Blue Jays have done some interesting things here. And, you know, unless we get something crazy for George Springer or Shane Bieber or something along the lines here, I think we're pretty well set. And this has met my expectations so far.
Awesome. Well, hey, Jesse, thank you so much for joining the show here. Of course, we'll have you back on if a Ellie De La Cruz swap ends up coming to fruition or anything major comes. We'd love to have you back on. But for right now, thank you so much for joining. We're going to remove you from the stage here. Let's bring Jason back into the fold to talk about this Clay Holmes trade. What do we think, Jason?
Ooh, that's a steep price. Jefferson Rojas is somebody that he had there was some runs this year where he looked phenomenal. He started off the season really rough. Last year in Double-A, didn't really show any power. The takeaway that I have from Jefferson Rojas going for a couple of rentals is maybe the way that they treated Jefferson Rojas and the way they treated Owen Ayers is a little different. The Cubs basically drew a line in the sand with Ayers, and then Rojas goes for 2 rentals. So I think you can, see how you want on those kinds of things. But interesting usage there. It does clear up some of the logjam in the minor leagues at that position, at the infield position, up and coming. Clay Holmes is great. Big Clay Holmes fan. I think he's an underrated arm right there. And I think this move helps the bullpen. And that's probably the thing that we don't talk about with Clay Holmes is that Clay Holmes is going to help the bullpen, and he can help the bullpen in 2 ways. So let's say Clay Holmes is coming back from rehab. He had his last rehab start yesterday. Apparently looked pretty good. But it's just he's struggling. He's struggling on maybe length. Clay Holmes has been a long-term reliever. Putting him in the bullpen in the playoffs makes a lot of sense. But what if he's pitching great? You've got Ben Brown, you've got Edward Cabrera, both guys who are coming back and look like I don't really know how much time they're going to have to build up. Those guys go to the bullpen now. Why? Because you can go to a playoff rotation of Gausman, Holmes, Shota, Boyd. There's your 4 right there. So Clay Holmes is going to help out the bullpen in some way. And then lastly, there were rumors that Clay Holmes was maybe talking extension with the Mets. He's coming over with a player option. So maybe you guarantee 2027 with a little bit more money. And then maybe 2028, you kind of extend this out. And then all of a sudden, Clay Holmes is your controllable starter that you got. You can start to see where this fits in. So I like this move on that end. Would I have traded Jefferson Rojas for him? Probably not. That's a lot. That's a significant piece. That's in terms of like Jose Soriano. The Blue Jays got Arjun Nimala, who's former first-round pick. Top 50 prospect on just about any industry ranking you go. Right. And you're going to see Jefferson Rojas sitting in the top 75. He's in the top 50 on a couple of these. I think. So like Soriano has years of control and Holmes doesn't. I think Soriano is probably a better stuff-wise pitcher than Clay Holmes. They kind of go in similar deals. So I think maybe that lets you know where the Cubs sit on Rojas a little bit. Maybe how that goes. So I thought that was interesting. I like it though. I think in terms of value, it's more like a C. Like it's not great value, but the 2026 Cubs are a lot better today because they made that trade.
And, like you said, sometimes the price to play poker in the trade deadline is a little bit of an overpay if you want to get somebody, a name brand, you know what I mean? And Clay Holmes, TBD if he's a name brand. I think a lot of folks know him. He's a former All-Star, I believe. He can provide some good innings. Like you said, it really improves the bullpen picture if you can kind of push somebody out there. It's going to be interesting to see what happens. But Jason, thank you so much for hopping on with us. I don't know. We might have to have you back. Do you want to make another call? I mean, we talked about
we'd love to. Hopefully the Cubs do something else here. Fun.
But okay. Well, we'll have you back on if something else happens. Yep. All right. Let's see, Brock, let's do a quick check-in here with you. Anything that we should know about in the rumor mill right now?
No, you've been staying pretty on top of things. Jason just talked a lot about the Cubs picking up Holmes, which is really the most recent thing that anybody is announcing right now. And, now we're in the final stretch. White Sox picked up a catcher, Joey Bart from the Braves. That's lower wattage thing. Yeah, it's interesting how the past couple of deadlines, except for the Twins last year, are kind of quiet in the final 2 hours, where it seems like everybody's kind of getting out in front of it in the morning and early afternoon, and then kind of being done. Then again, AJ Preller's out there somewhere, and unless he's being held hostage, it's Preller season. He's got to have something going on.
What I'm hearing is it's quiet, maybe a little too quiet, right?
Yeah, right.
I think that our radars are going off here. All right, well, Brock, we'll check in with you in a little bit. Feel free to interrupt us if something breaking happens. But for right now, we're going to welcome a couple of our Red Sox writers over at Talk Sox. Nick and Alex, how are you two doing? It's been a fun day for the Red Sox, right? Let's start with you, Alex. What are you thinking about, especially the Adley-Rutschman swap, which is kind of taking over the headline so far today, it feels like?
Yeah, so it's been kind of a wild ride with the delay potentially around the medicals with Rutschman. I wrote just about a week and a half, 2 weeks ago that he was my ideal trade target for the Red Sox, but I assumed that nobody would that deal wouldn't happen since it was in division, and the division tax is very, very real, as I'll let Nick talk about here in just a little bit. He's our prospects guy, but I'm excited. I think that it is such a huge addition. It's a cornerstone, potentially franchise-altering catcher. Obviously, Carlos Narvaez is headed the other way. In Baltimore, he's going to get actual playing time instead of being platooned like he has been this year. I've doubted Craig Breslow at the trade deadline for the last 2 years.
Fair.
I was very vocal about my wants to see him terminated earlier this season. It's well documented. This bought a lot of goodwill with me for whatever that's worth to him. So
okay. Well, hey, happy for you. Alex, you're more tuned into kind of the fan perspective from the Red Sox. Is this a popular move with the fans so far? Are they liking what they've seen from the Adley-Rutschman swap? Or you think that this is going to be a nice little jolt for the fan base?
I think so. And I think that that's going to build a lot of goodwill with Craig, with the majority of the fan base as well. Now, the price that was paid for Adley was steep. Yeah. We're talking multiple top 10 picks, top 10 prospects. But there have been, Nick and I were actually just talking about this, there have been some questions about maybe the health of both pitchers, Anthony Ianson and Kyson Witherspoon, headed back to Baltimore. Kind of the way that I approach this deal, and I think a lot of the way that a way that a lot of the fans are going to approach this is we're fans of the Boston Red Sox, and that's top to bottom, of course. But first and foremost, I'm a fan of the 26-man roster that can potentially win a World Series title. And that 26-man roster just got a whole lot better with the addition of Adley-Rutschman.
Especially with just how great things have been over the last month or so for the Red Sox here. I mean, you're adding some gas to the fire. Nick, why don't we talk a little bit about the package that was given up to bring Adley into the fold here? Like you said, it's a price that was pretty steep, but could be exciting. Can you tell us about what the Baltimore Orioles are getting in this package?
So the Orioles, they picked up 3 of the Red Sox top 10 prospects. Ianson, he is the Red Sox, or I should say was the Red Sox 2 pitching prospect. I actually just had a chance to watch him live. I actually just came back from Portland late last night, and I got to see him. He went 4 2/3 innings, and he had a career-high 10 strikeouts. And I'm just going to say this. Ianson, the way he pitches, he could be the real deal. He gets whiffs on his pitches, but the one thing that I do note about him is when it comes to him being a top prospect, it's not because his pitches are viewed as being elite. It's just how he attacks hitters. He actually releases the ball at a higher angle than the majority of minor league pitchers do at this point. So because of that, hitters don't get the usual eyesight when the pitch is coming in. His fastball is actually known for not having a lot of vertical spin on it, where it differentiates itself is through its horizontal movement, making it hard for batters to square up it. So he's definitely he was my favorite pitching prospect in the Red Sox organization, but the way that Breslow has been able to target pitching and develop it, they'll be able to replace him and Witherspoon. When it comes to Witherspoon, he was the Sox first-round pick last year. They had high hopes for him, and I won't lie, this year has been rough for him. He's had his ups and downs as any other minor league pitcher would. He was developing in high A Greenville, getting used to professional baseball compared to college. But one thing that I have read and I've seen from other people is there's a possibility that he was not gelling well with the Red Sox pitching philosophy. So they might have decided to sell high on him before he struggled anymore. Because in June, it looked like he was turning a corner and starting to look more like the pitcher he was when he was drafted, but July saw him regress. So at this point, they might have seen a chance to move him to Baltimore for Adley, and you can't blame them for that. Though the last main prospect in the deal, Azakar, he was my favorite position prospect outside of Franklin Arias. So this one is tough because I honestly believe this kid could be special. When I was doing research on him during the offseason, you would look at his stats and you would think it's nothing special. But when you look at his underlying metrics, there is a lot to like about him. He hits the ball extremely hard. This year, he started getting underneath it more and lifting the ball, which has led to, I believe, he's up to 18 home runs prior to the trade. He's only 19 years old, so he was someone that I expected to be in Double-A next year. But with the way that he can hit and field, I was kind of viewing him as like a prospect version of what Cedar Rafaela is currently doing with Boston. So if he continues that trajectory, Baltimore has themselves a center fielder for the future.
Another interesting angle with this Adley Rutschman trade is his contract situation. And I'm sure with what you guys see that Boston parted with will be a hell of a lot easier to stomach if the Red Sox are able to work out an extension at some point with Adley Rutschman. Because I know just from reading up on the reports and what you guys have already mentioned, both of you, Nick and Alex, is that, Boston gave up a lot, but I'm sure a lot of that kind of peppers in with, well, if they can get an extension done with Adley Rutschman, it, kind of makes it like an easier pill to swallow. Is that part of this for you guys as well? And you think maybe something Boston's, spinning around in their own minds, the powers that be, is that, hey, we got Adley Rutschman, now we need to make sure to lock him up for the future?
I think so. And I would honestly be a little shocked if that hasn't already been somewhat explored.
Agreed. Yeah, go ahead. I was just saying I agree with that. Because right now I believe you get him for this year and then whatever we have next year,
yes.
right? Because we don't know. And then after 2027, he is set to be a free agent. So for me, and again, you guys are the experts, not me when it comes to the Red Sox, but just on the surface, I'd be pretty stunned if this trade gets done. Adley Rutschman is playing somewhere else, come 2028. I would imagine Boston made this move with the thought process in mind of we've got to get something done on an extension with him for what they had to give up. Granted, it is, a one division rival trading with another division rival, but are you guys kind of that same mindset that the next step now is just getting something done extension wise with Adley?
Yeah, and I'd like to see it before the end of the season, if at all possible, or at least before December 1st, when everything has to go radio silent until who knows when next year. Like I said, he, with his defense, he grades out in the top 98th, 100th percentile behind the dish. He is every bit of a franchise cornerstone you could want at catcher. And eventually, you may have the conversation oh, should he move to first? Is he going to profile as a DH? And I mean, I'm talking 4 or 5 years down the road at this point. But you're not giving up that haul for an in-division catcher if you don't think that you can get him extended before the lockout comes on December 1.
Are you in lockstep with that too, Nick? Kind of with the extension talks on Adley?
Yeah, in my opinion, the amount of prospects you gave up here, you don't do that trade unless you have a feeling you can lock them up for, 5-6 years after 2027, which is what I'm hoping the minimum.
Yeah. One thing I like doing too around trade deadline time is kind of zooming out the microscope and looking at how certain, teams 1, 2, and 3, A, B, and C got to this point. And to me, as a baseball fan, there might not be a more fun case study than the Boston Red Sox. So if I wanted to pick your guys' mind a little bit on this too, if we go back even a month and a half, 2 months around there, and now you see where Boston is at and being a buyer at the deadline, being aggressive, going out and making that move that sends more than a little ripple throughout the league where it's whoa, Boston went out and, I was reading, the Yankees were reported to be very interested in Adley Rutschman, and Boston, threw a bigger punch to land the in-division rival catcher. But did you, I mean, if you were to take some truth serum, did either of you see this a month and a half, 2 months ago, that the Red Sox would be in this spot coming off a sweep of the Dodgers, being aggressive buyers at the deadline? Because it's, I mean, I I'm a Cubs follower, but so I have no ill will towards the Red Sox. But it's been really, really fun to follow along the last month and a half.
I'll let Nick start this one.
Go ahead.
All right. So one of the jokes that has been going on at Talk Sox is the entire season I kept saying it's too early to give up. Give them time. This roster, the pitching is too great for them to continue struggling. Of course, this is even after we just lost 2 of 3 to Colorado in the most heartbreaking fashions. But I'm still in there saying, no, give it time.
To me,
joking. Okay. Yeah. So, just joking around, talking about, okay, who could we trade Chapman to? Who could we trade Duran to? All of these pieces off. And
Sonny
I'm like,
Gray,
what?
yeah.
Yeah. And I'm like, what do you mean selling? We're going to be buying come July. We're going to go on a run. Of course, I didn't think they'd win 15 in a row. But, yeah.
Yeah, should be fun. Hey, look, it's Adley is he's a marquee player, right? It's fun to add a marquee player at this point in the season, no matter what, but especially after such a fun last month. There's a lot of different discussions about how the trade deadline was going to be looking. Guys, I'm going to ask you the same thing we've asked everybody else.
Can I jump in real quick?
Yeah.
Heyman 2 minutes ago said the Red Sox are acquiring Eli White
for Tyler Uberstein.
Correct. Yeah. So they're still active out there making another move.
Very interesting. What do we think about this deal, guys? Now that we got it here.
I think it's really weird. I mean, when it comes to pitching, I trust Craig Breslow, and so if Breslow is trading Uberstein, then he has some kind of plan for how to replace that slot. It's like Nick said earlier. If there's one thing I'm confident with Breslow on, it is replenishing the pitching pipeline with guys who are going to exceed at the major league level. I don't know a ton about Eli White. I don't follow the Braves very closely. So I don't quite know what the plan is there. It was reported, about an hour ago, less than, Chris Cotillo from Mass Live, that Marcelo Meyer is widely available as we are approaching the deadline. That's the industry chatter. So this could be maybe a precursor there, just as another potential off the bench bat, because I think that's a best case scenario for Marcelo Meyer for the rest of this season. If he's still on the team past 5 o'clock my time, he'll be in AAA for the rest of the season. But maybe we're seeing some other move. I know there's still some connections to some shortstops out there, but we're down to the wire. And as we saw last year, when Craig Breslow's down to the wire, he panics.
Yeah.
So hopefully the Rutschman deal took a lot of that pressure off.
Like you said with Mayer, like value maybe not super high right now. If they were to move him in kind of a change of scenery thing, what would you hope that they would bring back? Maybe Nick, we could probably start with you here. What would you be looking to acquire in that case? Because Meyer's it carries a lot of value. You know what I mean? Just from a national scale, based on his former top prospect pedigree. Things haven't gone as planned, but he would still be. I think a lot of teams would be excited to bring him into the fold. What would you hope that the Red Sox would bring back if they were to deal him away?
Okay. So with Marcelo, the big concern, which has been with him since he got drafted with the Red Sox, is can his body hold up? Obviously, as we've seen every year, an injury happens here or there. So if the Red Sox do trade him, and I've been saying this for a few weeks now, just in general, I want to see them get a starting rotation arm. Because, I mean, our rotation, it's been fantastic, but we also have young guys like Peyton Tolley, Jake Bennett. They've both either reached or just about to reach their career highs in innings pitched. So I'm a little bit worried that the two of them are going to hit a wall, especially once we get into like the later parts of August. So I'd rather us have like starting pitching depth ready to go. I mean, we just traded Tyler Uberstein. He opened the year as one of our starting pitching like depth options, but due to the need of help in the bullpen, they transitioned him into a bullpen role instead. So that took away any chance of him starting for us, not to mention, he just got traded. But so if Meyer does get moved, I would hope it's in a deal, even if it's not a 1-for-1, if it's Meyer and a couple other players, to bring back a veteran arm that we could slot into the 4th or 5th spot into our rotation and provide us innings down the stretch.
I think that makes a lot of sense. I think my play for Meyer is a proven left-handed reliever. Giovanni Moran has been really good out of the pen for the Red Sox, but I think that we are seeing him run into that wall that Nick was just talking about. His last 2 appearances have not been good. I'm worried about a left-handed reliever as we push towards, hopefully the first wild card, maybe even the AL East title. A name that I've seen floated out is Brennan Bernardino, who obviously was with the Red Sox, was traded to the Rockies. He's not quite the high leverage lefty, but he knows the system. He worked well in the system. I think Meyer or even Duran is far too much of an ask for somebody like Brennan Bernardino, but that's a name that's been loosely connected all day, so that wouldn't shock me. But a high leverage lefty reliever is what I'm really looking for to close this out.
You brought up the name Jarren Duran. He's been a popular trade candidate amongst many fans and certainly amongst many media members. At one point, he seemed like a really good fit for a team like the San Diego Padres. He could fit in a few different places here. Kind of an up and down season for him. Where are you guys at with Jarren Duran? Should they strike right now if they could get a deal, get him out of that clubhouse? What do you think about Mr. Jarren Duran?
I would.
I'll let you go first.
I'm over the Jarren Duran experience. I've been over the Jarren Duran experience. Obviously, coming out of 24 with All-Star Game MVP, and he got MVP votes at the end of the season. Like there was no real path to trading Jarren Duran then, and I recognize that it would have sent an awful message to the fans and to the clubhouse as a whole. But I've been on the trade Jarren Duran bandwagon since that offseason. I think that for as good as this trade deadline could potentially be for Craig Breslow, one of the most damning things about his tenure in Boston whenever it is over is that he failed to capitalize on Jarren Duran before the inevitable kind of bottoming out that we've seen this season happen. And AJ Preller's crazy. And has almost obsessed with Jarren Duran, as we've seen for the last 2 trade deadlines. So it wouldn't shock me if he wound up in San Diego in some last-ditch trade. But San Diego's in a much different place than they were even 2 weeks ago. So I don't know how much they'd be willing to give up to acquire a Jarren Duran. But, yeah, his value is as low as it could possibly be, but I think that you still find a way to move him out of that clubhouse if I was the one calling the shots.
Very fair. Very fair.
Yeah, myself, I said the best point to trade Duran was after 24, but you couldn't do that from a baseball standpoint. Like, a lot of fans would be upset. It would send the wrong message to the team as well. And in my opinion, the perfect time from a roster management standpoint was trading him after last year, because you already had your 3 starting outfielders in Roman Anthony, Cedon Rafaela, and Wilyer Abreu. So at that point, Duran knew he wasn't going to be starting in the outfield. The fans knew, the organization knew, and yet they still held on to him with the idea that he was going to DH and occasionally play the outfield. I mean, that's hindsight 2020. Anthony gets hurt, and so Duran instead is our starting left fielder, so it worked out in a sense, but he is just production-wise, it has dropped off this year, and I honestly don't know how much longer you can put him out there every day. I mean, he does a lot of things well, but he also does a lot of frustrating things, which hurts his trade value. So I wouldn't be surprised if Breslow looks to try and move him somewhere. I don't know how much value he has around the league at this point, so they might have to just hold off until the winter. But I think it's time just to move on from Duran. So it will be interesting to see what Breslow does with him.
Hey, Lou, real quick, too. It's kind of perfect timing that we have you two on. Ken Rosenthal.
I was just about to say, yeah.
Yeah, Giants are close to acquiring your guys' boy, Marcelo, from the Red Sox for reliever Eric Miller, it says.
Oh,
wow. Ken Rosenthal repeating that 2 minutes ago. So kind of perfect timing to have you guys on if you don't mind reacting to that, too.
It's exactly what I said.
It is. It is.
They got to be watching. They're watching our stream. You know, they're like, that's a good idea.
I saw earlier. I saw earlier that there was interest in him from the Giants, but I didn't realize, it was going to be Marcelo Meyer for that reliever.
Yeah, I think that it goes a long way to solving that problem. That's a huge ballpark for him. Once he comes back up, I think that he'll hit well there. I now have I had a Rafael Devers jersey that became a Marcelo Meyer jersey this year. So whoever takes number 11, once Marcelo is officially shipped out, it'll be their jersey. But yeah, I think it's a great trade. Marcelo was a classic change of scenery candidate, and it was obvious that the front office had kind of gotten tired of whatever the Marcelo Meyer experience was.
Very interesting. Clearly, there's still a lot of moving pieces going around here. We started talking about it a little bit, guys. If they don't make any more moves, how are you liking these deadline swaps so far? What grade would you give them, and what more are you hoping that they do between now and 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. your time?
Nick, where are you on that?
All right. Right now, I'm not going to lie. I'll give them a B at this point. I like the moves they've made. The only one that I really can't talk on is the Uberstein for Eli White. In myself, it's clear that Breslow did not have much value in Uberstein if he moved him that quickly. However, I will say this. It's a B right now for me, and it's carried heavily by the Adley trade. If they get a starting pitcher before 6 p.m., that B becomes an A for me.
Okay. Alex?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty right there with you. I'm B+. Could maybe give it a couple points and round it up to a 90, 91 to give it an A-. I absolutely love the Adley trade. If they get an extension worked out with him at any point before the lockout, I think that instantly carries it to potential A+ category. You can't judge the Curtis Mead trade right now, obviously. Two at bats, a broken wrist, but I think that he makes a lot of sense for the Red Sox. So I'm not going to hold that against Craig Breslow by any means. I'm with Nick. If there's a starting pitcher in the next 40 minutes, I think we're cooking with gas in Boston.
What was your favorite Marcelo Meyer moment in a Red Sox uniform?
Oh man, there's just so many.
Yeah, gotta be.
I've actually got one. It was when he started heating up last year after the All-Star break. They were in Philly right before the news broke of that injury where he came up, what was it? I think he had like a double in extra innings or something like that. And then he out of the game for a pinch runner. And then the next day we find out he goes on the IL, which that's not the reason why. It's just the way that he came up clutch in that, the way that he came up clutch in that game. Like there was that,
or even the time when he hit at Fenway was a pesky, and that's always nice.
Didn't he have 2 in that game too? Not 2 pesky shots, just 2 home runs.
Yeah, the first one was a pesky, and the second one was a no doubter. It was that's when we all, I think, were like, okay, he's here, and let's go. And then it's just kind of been a steady decline ever since.
Talking about Eric Miller as one of the return pieces here, he's got some really interesting stuff under the hood, just in terms of his strikeout percentage and his whiff rate, some of the expected numbers on what he brings to the table here. It's got to be pretty fun to bring in a late inning weapon like that into the fold right now. Are you guys excited by this addition? Were you hoping for somebody else when it comes to bullpen arms, or how thrilled are you with an Eric Miller coming back?
I'm stoked on it. I didn't have a name circled. Well, Luke Weaver, I liked Luke Weaver a lot. When it looked like Craig was maybe going to operate on the outskirts of the trade market, I thought that made a lot of sense. But no, you're right. When you dive under the hood, like there's a lot to like here, and it really gives the Red Sox a path towards, just really good splits that they don't have right now. And it'll take a lot of pressure off Moran to kind of be a 5th, 6th inning guy instead.
Awesome. Anything to add, Nick?
Yeah. So I just pulled up Miller right now. When you look at his Savant page, so much of it fits what Breslow looks for in pitching. He's 6'5". He loves tall, big pitchers. He has a lead extension, just under 7 feet of it. In his fastball, his sinker average is just under 97, and his four seam is the same. Like, this is all things that Breslow looks for in his pitchers. He loves big, strong guys who can just give you extension. So I never even thought about Eric Miller as like a possible trade candidate. I had seen it floated around Twitter a couple days ago, and I was just like, I don't know. I don't know much about him, but just looking at it just right now as a quick look, he's exactly what Breslow loves in pitchers. And coming into the deadline, I wanted them to get a left-handed reliever. That was one of the 4 positions that I wanted. It was a right-handed bat, a left-handed reliever, and the big one for me was definitely starting pitching. So we'll see how my checklist finishes in the next 35 minutes now.
Yeah. Well, we'll see what happens, guys. Thank you so much for joining on our show here. If something surprising happens, we'd love to get your reactions again. So please stand by. I'm not sure I'm predicting anything, but hey, it would be fun to see you again. But for right now, thanks again for joining.
Excellent. Thanks.
All right. Another quick check-in with the man in the chair. Brock, anything going on in the rumor mill right now that's worth talking about before we get to some other action here?
Yeah, the Buster Posey's been very busy today. He just traded Ramos to the Yankees.
Oh.
But while we have a couple minutes, our Padres contributor wasn't able to make it. And just, it's been a quiet day for good old AJ Preller over there, but he did pick up Robbie Ray today, which is really shores up a huge need for the Padres. They needed innings. They needed quality innings. They're surprisingly, in my opinion, at least, they're in, really well positioned for a stretch run. They've really been on a heater lately. Gotten back into the wild card race when it looked like they were slowly just drifting off, and Ray really fills a need for them. But it really shows that they are still financially constrained, that they're not taking on any of Ray's salary. So, it looked like Miguel Mendez, who the Padres mission, I think, had him ranked 3rd as the Padres' 3rd best prospect in a really depleted system. So that's not saying necessarily a lot. But, and then who else did they include? Let me grab my notes on that. And it's suspect that Mendez, the Padres might not have seen him as a good fit because he had to be added to the 40-man. But, is it Joniel Hernandez? Also went over. And Steve, our Padres mission contributor, kind of got the vibe that Hernandez went over as compensation for the Padres not taking on Robbie Ray's salary, which I hate that. I don't like the idea of giving up prospect capital just for money. And with the Padres having new ownership coming in, I'm a little bit surprised that they aren't a little bit looser with the pocketbooks. But Jake is back from Brewer Fanatic. The Brewers just swung another deal with the Rockies. We can get Wakey Jakey over here.
All right. What do we got? What's working for us?
Hello, everybody. So the Brewers have just managed to trade acquire Antonio Senzatella for left-handed pitcher Mark Manfredi Jr. and Juan Martinez. Mark Manfredi is a lefty, pretty solid stuff, certainly behind a good fastball. But the Brewers may or may not have used him this year in some sort of middle or low leverage relief. And Juan Martinez is currently in low A, contact hitter at second base, but hasn't really tapped into much power yet. So certainly seems a much more reasonable trade at this point than the last one, looked at least on paper. But Senzatella looks exciting, guys. I mean, if you said Brewers, this dude reminds me a little bit of he's a Brandon Woodruff approach to baseball, which is just, I'm going to throw fastballs just in the zone. I'm just going to pound the zone and do what you can with it. Hasn't struck out a ton in Colorado, but he's got a 3.3 FIP with half his games being played at Coors Field. I think that's pretty exceptional. So we're talking 96, 97 miles an hour. And when you get him away from there, one of the guys I subscribe with, a guy, Jeremy Machino, has this app where basically he can say, well, look, you're playing at Coors Field at altitude. What does your stuff look like if I bring you down to this level or that level? And basically Senzatella will get about 2 inches of extra ride in his fastball. So we should see a bit more swing and miss on pitches like that. The cutter already looks great, but we're going to see 4 seams, sinkers, cutters, right over the heart of the zone. And Pat Murphy is just going to be licking his lips at someone like this, man. This is Brewers. This is Brewers baseball.
Yeah, no, it's really exciting about Senzatella in that, he was already, a decent name coming into this year, but he started throwing that cutter a lot, and it's just gotten so much success, even in Colorado. So I like the fact that, like you said, his fastball's got a lot of ride, but then he also has that sinker and that cutter. I love when guys can mix and match those three fastballs on top of some of the other secondary stuff that they have. What do you think they're going to do in the Brewers pitching lab to get the next level of Senzatella? Do you expect something like that?
Honestly, I don't think so. I think it's going to be very much the way he's pitched is already how the Brewers like to operate. Yes, they might tweak it around and say, I want a few more sinkers and a few less four seams. They have been that way inclined in recent years. And the sinker's been really interesting because almost no one has swung and missed at it this year. But in terms of the contact against it, its expected run value on those batted balls is a negative figure. So that's pretty strong. So I can see the Brewers leading on that a little more, maybe situation dependent. But other than that, no, I think the way he approached, and I saw him pitching against the Brewers in Colorado, and he pitches like he's already been in the Brewers lab. So it's very tough to make meaningful changes at this time of year anyway. You don't have concrete time really to work with people. You can make a slight tweak here or there. So I think what you see is what you're going to get with Senzatella. The only concern is he has been slightly rougher of late. He's lost a little bit of command and left a few more maybe over the heart of the plate than he'd like. So he's on a bit of a downturn at the moment, and that's maybe hurt his market and why the Brewers got him a lot cheaper than they did, say, Dustin May and the Jojo Romeros. But no, I really can't see much changing in terms of this arsenal.
Okay, sounds good. Well, hey, thank you so much for jumping back in. We'll see if they got something else cooking here, and maybe we can get you back in one more time, Jake. That would be exciting. But for right now, we're going to take you off. Sorry, I cut you off. Any words there?
Just take me out. Just take me out.
Say it.
Please, right now, we're going to take you out. Bang.
Take you out.
Yeah.
All right, thanks, Jake. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jake.
All right. Very fun. I love when we can get people to pop back in here. Brock, any other news and notes before we get our next batch of friends in?
Nope. I'm, still kind of reeling a little bit on the Marcelo Meyer to San Francisco. It feels like a hell of a deal for the Giants. Myers really has underperformed, but, it was only a year and a half ago he was
top 5.
Was he
top 5?
Yeah, was he
game.
top 5? Top 10 for sure.
Right.
Prospect, and he was right up there, right behind Roman Anthony.
Yeah.
And how his stock has fallen, but that's a heck of a deal. If you're in Buster Posey's position, you take a flyer on that type of guy every time, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's an interesting trade. I'm excited to see what else is coming down the pike here. We only got 28 minutes until the deadline officially. I'm excited to see what happens. But Brock will check back in with you in a few minutes here. For right now, we are going to pop in a couple of my friends from Twins Daily. We have Mr. Matt Lenz and we have Sherry Cerny. What is going on, my friends? It has been kind of quiet on the Twins front, right? How are you guys feeling today? Are you excited by what could be happening, and how deflated will you be if no further moves occur? Matt, let's start with you. How are you feeling today?
I'm feeling pretty good. Honestly, I won't be too upset if they don't go in more. I just think, especially with all the moves that have come about in the last hour or so, I just feel like there's not a move or a set of moves that the Twins can make that would make them anything more than a borderline playoff team. I just don't see them making a big enough impact that they really are gonna to make a decent run. So if they stand pat, I haven't been super impressed with their moves so far, but if they stand pat, I'll actually be completely fine.
Yeah, so you talked about the moves they've already made. They brought in AJ Minter from the Mets, and they also brought in Dean Kramer from the Baltimore Orioles. Sherry, first of all, how are you feeling about those two additions specifically?
I wish we would have done maybe a little bit more, but we are always renters. We are never really going for the big talent, so I'm not upset about it. Don't know if it's enough to get us up above Boston and New York. I'm not worried about New York necessarily. Boston continues to make moves. So I'm not sure. I want them to be enough to get us over that hump to beat Cleveland, who isn't doing anything. So it's to be determined. I'm not mad about them. I guess I'm indifferent.
Okay. Are there any kind of juicy rumors that you've seen happening for the Minnesota Twins over the last maybe day or two that would really intrigue you specifically, that you're like, ooh, I would love to see them make something work for X player? Sherry, let's start with you there. Any names that really excite you specifically? If not, we can pass it over to Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. So Neto's been the big talk, at least in the past 8 hours. So that would be actually really nice. However, I'm nervous about what prospects would have to go with that.
Right.
So I'm not sold yet. If it's worth it. Specifically as a shortstop. So I'm kind of not sure what we would do with them. I know they're, unless it's getting rid of Tristan Gray, no offense. But you know, that's it for me. But
if they trade Tristan Gray for Zach Neto, I think Jeremy Zoll is getting executive of the year, Sherry. But no, I hear what you're saying for sure.
I just don't want any other prospects to go, but you know, it is what it is. But I was actually kind of excited to bring Luis Arraez home. I don't know if it really would have fit with the way the club is working. So, you know, it got me excited for a second. And when I saw they were going to Cleveland, Cleveland was dating him, essentially. I was like, oh God, just not Cleveland. So I'm really, really glad that happened. But I'll be happy with Neto. I just wouldn't be excited about the trade.
Matt, how would you feel? Lindsay, how would you feel about a Zach Neto trade, bringing him into the fold? Of course, it's all going to depend on the price that the Twins would have to pay to make that happen. But how do you like his fit with the rest of this club without knowing what the price would be?
Yeah, I like it a lot. I mean, I know we have a big batch of infielders, and we're all waiting for KC to get the call here. But I don't know. You got a guy that has already established himself as a very good big leaguer. Again, depending on the cost, but to me, that's a no-brainer type of move. He's controllable. Those are the types of moves that I would be, if we're buying for this year, I'd want them controllable beyond 2026 for sure. So yeah, I think Neto would be great as a Twin.
Okay. Brock, anything to chime in there?
Yeah, you know, the Twins, they really have to do something because Cleveland picked up Joe Adell and they picked up Craig Yoho. They're not high moves, but they are absolutely 100% Cleveland Guardians moves. And they're probably going to make
the Twins just acquired Jeff Hoffman.
Oh, old friend.
Blue Jays.
Blue Jays fans rejoice. They do not like Jeff Hoffman, but he is a perfectly, he's fine. He's a good enough guy. I mean, the Twins needed so many damn bullpen arms that you could throw anybody out there. It would help them. But, you know, as the offensive scene has shown us over the past several days is they need a right-handed bat in the outfield. Why is this so hard, man? Why is this so hard after so many years we can't get a right-handed bat in the outfield? And there were a few available, and yet again, I think they're not going to. I commend them for the bullpen pickups. I think those were right, but I think Cleveland got more better, if that's a dumb way to put it, but than the Twins have, because I think the Guardians are going to turn Yoho into just an excellent reliever.
Okay, fair enough. Speaking of our division rivals from the Minnesota Twins, I was kind of hoping to see some moves similar to what the Chicago White Sox have been doing. I liked the idea of the Twins maybe going out and getting a Luis Castillo. Maybe, he's not having the best year of his career. He's now 33, 34 years old, controllable for next year with, I think, a vesting option. Would have been fun to see Luis Castillo. We then saw the White Sox go out and get a center fielder in Brenton Doyle. We've seen some other moves that they've made that have, I thought, hey, this would have been really fun for the Minnesota Twins. But Jeff Hoffman, I'm excited to hear. I'm curious what the return package is going to be, so keep us posted there. Sherry, I'll ask you real quick, what letter grade would you give the Twins at this deadline so far, and what are you hoping to see in the next 21 minutes here?
Oh my God. Compared to last year or this year specifically, I'm gonna give them definitely. I'm gonna give them a B plus. I actually wrote an article on Castillo and assuming him. I really thought that he would have fit in great with the culture. You're right. He is having a down year, but we have Pete Mackey, and I feel like having Pete Mackey is a like significant thing, and LaTroy Hawkins is really doing a lot. So I'm definitely going to give them a B plus. Sure beats an F or a no pass from last year. So, but I do have to say, I'm seeing how it's working out. So B plus. If Hoffman comes through, maybe I move that up to an A.
Okay, I think that's fair. Matthew Taylor jumping in the chat here and saying Hill, Klein, and Pena in the package for Hoffman. That's an interesting price to pay. That's coming from Darren Davey Wolf. We welcomed onto the stage here the Twins geek himself, Mr. John Bonus. John, what are you hearing, especially as it pertains to this Jeff Hoffman trade, and what would you think about that being the return package for somebody like him?
I've heard that they've been talking. We've actually been hearing that they're interested in Hoffman for several days.
Yeah.
And I kind of wondered if we would hear something like that, coming earlier than it has. I'm encouraged by the fact that they seem to be chasing not mediocre relievers. That they are. I consider Hoffman, especially if you take a look at his numbers past, say, June 1st. He's been outstanding. He's been really outstanding over like his last 10 starts. And so, he would be a significant get if they can end up pulling it off. I do feel like that has been sort of the focus. And we've got 19 minutes to get something done. And I'm optimistic that they will find a way to get something done in that vein. I'll be honest with you. I think I would say that they get an incomplete to some extent if they end up with just Minter as their one bullpen reinforcement right now. I think on Saturday's Gleeman and the Geek Patreon show, we talked a little bit how they had gotten two deals done. We were really encouraged by how early they had gotten 2 deals done, and that if they got a third deal done fairly early, that would allow them to sort of have deals come to them. They could be creative and take a look at sort of what the market has had. Now it feels like they have something undone. And I don't think you need to give up too much for Hoffman, in part because Hoffman's expensive. Hoffman has and by the way, if a Hoffman deal does come through, what it does show us is that the Pohlad wasn't just blowing smoke. That Tom Pohlad wasn't just blowing smoke. He's due, I think, like $3 million more this year, and then $3+ million more this year, and then on top of that, he's got some performance incentives that I think once he reaches certain innings limits, so he could be worth a $4 or $5 million tab just this year, and then on top of that, he's under contract for next year. That's not a deal that you can get out of. It's not something arbitration eligible or something. So they're making a $16 million commitment, or $15 to $16 million commitment if they go and trade for Jeff Hoffman. And that is why I'm optimistic. That's one of the reasons why I'm optimistic about the deal. I feel like the Blue Jays, who are dealing with all kinds of luxury tax issues themselves, would love to drop an $11 million or $16 million. They'd love to get rid of underneath from a $5 million tab this year, because the luxury tax stuff on that is significantly higher than that. They might lose a $5 million player, but they end up saving, I don't know, I haven't done the math, but $11 million, $12 million in taxes on top of that.
Yeah.
And then with and then $11 million next year also helps them significantly. And Hoffman, they've got a closer. The Twins helped with that. So I'm not sure that they necessarily they might view him very well as sort of a luxury more so than a necessity. He certainly is this year, and he probably is for next year. So it only makes sense that they would be willing to let him go.
Yeah, it's some big money coming back here in terms of what he signed for next year. I don't know how much stock I'd put into this, but Jeff Hoffman is a familiar arm. He was with the Twins in spring training. I want to say it was 2023 before his breakout, and they decided not for us, but they decided to go back on it this year. The biggest piece going back in terms of prospect capital has to be Dason Hill. It has to be left-hander. He's had an up and down year. He's battled some injury stuff, but he was still looking like an exciting arm in their system. I do think that's probably a fair price to pay. John Klein and Demiri Pena also going back in that deal. Some lower level prospects. I'm curious.
So has it been reported that that's what the Blue Jays are asking for?
That's what Matthew Taylor has put in the chat here. He says that's per Darren Doogie Wolfson, so maybe not official yet. But if that is the package, that's a steep price to pay. But that's the price of playing poker when we're talking about high leverage bullpen arms and the premium that comes with dealing at the deadline here. Lindsay, let's go with you.
That's interesting that because generally we hear a lot of teams are searching for prospects with steam. Hill's the exact opposite of that right now, right? So, but then maybe they view it as an opportunity to buy low. I think that's a steep price to pay. And then I would be surprised if that price doesn't come down.
I'd have to look up where he lands on Twins Daily's prospect rankings. I want to say Dason Hill's probably in the back half of their top 10. I want to say I can look that up here in a little bit.
Yeah, he's definitely in the back end, but I think he's like 8 or 9, something like that.
Right, and still
he's certainly passed up by a number of other people.
Yeah.
Dan Hayes just tweeted out that Jeff Hoffman's 2026 salary is going to be assumed by the Twins, but the Blue Jays are paying a portion of his 2027.
Okay.
Is this deal done?
This is from Dan Hayes. Minnesota Twins are taking on the remainder of Jeff Hoffman's 2026, but Blue Jays are paying a portion of his 2027. So Matt Trueblood. Yep, Hill, Klein, and Pena.
And Pena for Hoffman. Okay, well, interesting
Hill's
move.
at number 9 in our latest prospect
Yay,
rankings.
during the segment.
There we go. All right. Well, hey, good timing. Glad that they were able to pull this move here. I'm curious to see if they have any more buzzer beaters over the next 14 minutes here. John, while we have you here, you're plugged into some of your sources. What other areas could the Twins be looking to improve with a swap here today? What do you think would be most likely in terms of positional acquisition?
Well, I mean, the Neto stuff is really interesting. I have heard that they are weighing it. They are weighing the price of Neto.
That would be interesting. They have some shortstop prospects in the upper minors. Kalen Culpepper, we brought up that he's nearing his debut. You got to think coming up here, as long as he can stay healthy. He might not be a long-term answer at shortstop. We're not exactly sure of that yet. Merrick Houston does look like he's going to be a shortstop for the foreseeable future. Curious how Neto would fit into that because Neto is a true shortstop. I mean, he's got some up and down numbers in terms of DRS and outs above average, but he certainly would look like the best shortstop on the team, I would think.
Well, I mean, for now, yeah. I mean, yeah, he'd definitely be an upgrade for this year's team. Yeah. Whether or not he would survive long-term at that defensive position, I think probably has, there's some questions about. I think last year was his first year of arbitration, but he's a Super 2. Mm-hmm. So they would have him under team control for another 3 more years. And they would have a chance to try to figure out whether or not what they want to do with him defensively over that period of time. But yeah, obviously he'd be plugged into the starting shortstop immediately. He provides an additional offensive layer to this team that they absolutely have not had and absolutely need. It's a clear upgrade in terms of helping out this team for the play for this year and then potentially, for future years as well. I think it probably signals they're a little worried about Culpepper and what he's going on after his injury in St. Paul. Just the fact that this conversation has been happening and that they're considering it makes me wonder about how confident they are that Culpepper is going to be able to come back strong and perform anything, near what we saw middle of the season towards the end of the season, given that information. I'll also just throw this out there because, just because of the crazy Rushman deal that went down. I've said all along that I don't think the Twins are going to be dealing Jeffers, in part because they can't replace Jeffers.
Sure.
Neto would replace Jeffers.
Okay, from the right side of the plate.
That would be something where they could take a look at and go, this allows us to take advantage of, or to at least listen to offers in a different way, at a different level of seriousness about it. So, they've got 11 minutes to pull off 2 huge deals. Then I don't know that that's necessarily going to happen, but that was my initial take on it, was that, if they get Neto, great, then the huge upgrade to the offense for this year. And then it would also allow them that if somebody decided to go crazy for Jeffers on a rental catcher, which is not the same as Rushman, don't get me wrong, they could at least listen to what they had to say.
Behold the man chiming in here. The Twins also sent $250,000 in international pool money, which they just received from the Blue Jays last month. I love the idea that they're just like me and my friends with the same $20 on Venmo that we're just ping-ponging back and forth. You know what I mean? That's a fun little wrinkle to the story here.
The Guardians just acquired Foster Griffin from the Nationals.
Interesting. Okay, so a starting pitcher going to Cleveland. Okay, I think we're going to start seeing a steady little stream of moves here. Lindsay, what are you thinking about the Hoffman addition? Do you think that he's going to be their primary saver, their primary closer going forward here? Or do you think that he's going to be more of a fireman? You want him facing the heart of the opposing team's lineup. Where do you see Jeff Hoffman lining up in terms of their bullpen hierarchy here?
Yeah, just generally, I think unless you're rolling Mason Miller out there, I think best move is just to have your best pitcher face the heart of the lineup in the later innings, whether that's even the 7th, 8th, 9th, whatever. So between him and Yoendries, maybe even Andrew Morris, closer by committee type of deal. I like the move for the Twins. Hill is a pretty steep price when you add in the other prospects in the bonus pool money, but he's only 20 years old, but he's had command issues. He's only thrown a little over 100 professional innings. So I think this is the type of deal that you have to make to get it done. But yeah, I like Hoffman. I think people will look at his full year stats and be pretty underwhelmed. But after John mentioned it, I pulled up his splits tool, and yeah, he's got like an ERA just a little bit above 1 since June 1st with like a 25% strikeout minus walk rate. So he has been dominant since June 1st. So good move. I like the fact that he's controllable through next season, even if it's, I think Matt Taylor in our Slack said like $12 million next year, maybe prorated if we lose some games. So that seems a little steep money-wise, but overall I'm a fan of the move.
I'll throw out one cautionary note about Hoffman. It was reported after he signed with the Blue Jays that he failed 2 physicals prior to signing with the Blue Jays before the 2025 season. So in between the time that he had his breakout success with the Phillies and before he signed the 3-year, $33 million deal with the Blue Jays, he did fail 2 physicals. Now, I would be more concerned about that if he'd struggled for his last couple outings, like say, a recent starting pitcher we just picked up. But the fact that what we've seen is exactly the opposite, is that he's been absolutely dominant over July and was really, really good in June. And it seems to be, getting better as the year goes on versus worse. But yes, both the Braves and Baltimore, he failed physicals with them prior to signing with the Blue Jays. But, he's been fairly healthy for the last year and a half. So.
You know what? The Twins have a type, baby, and it is guys who fail 2 different physicals. That's could be concerning. Who knows? Let's hope it's not the case. It was pretty clear that Hoffman needed a change of scenery from the Toronto Blue Jays. Whether it be the performance in the playoffs last year to kind of the up and down nature of his stuff this year, I think it's good for him to get out of maybe Toronto. I think this will be a good addition overall.
I'm a little surprised they gave up Hill for him.
Sure.
I don't know. I haven't taken enough of a look at what the returns are for high leverage relievers at the trade deadline. And, relievers do get overpaid for at the trade deadline. And the amount of money that he has coming isn't a crazy amount of money. Like, it's not like, that's a bad contract amount of money. It's not a great contract amount of money. Like, it's a fair contract amount of money. But I'm surprised that the Twins must have believed that the Blue Jays had other options out there, or they have just grown stale on Deshaun Hill, which, given his performance this year,
it could be.
One could understand.
It could be. The Twins do have a good farm system right now. I think it's an interesting time for them to be buyers or to make themselves buyers, because we talked about it on the Twins Off Daily podcast a couple weeks ago, and we had Tom Fromming on the show, and he said that it's good to have a farm system that is top 5 in baseball. You don't want that necessarily for 5 years straight. You know what I mean? That means you're not necessarily capitalizing on dealing some players away to improve the big league club. So I'm okay with them looking to the back half of that top 10. If they do want to touch somebody a little higher up on the list, we're going to be aiming a little higher in the return. But Sherry, how do you feel about that? Are you cool with the Twins cashing in on some of their prospect capital right now, being a game under 500 at the trade deadline?
Honestly, I guess for me, as long as Walker Jenkins doesn't come up, I'm fine. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm against it. But again, some of our top prospects have been hurt quite a bit. And so I do wonder if maybe they could be part of a trade package, but it's so hard because you hit on it that our farm system is finally so solid and good. Like, I am excited about it. So I don't know. I don't mind trading some of those away. I would even be willing, if it gets us something better or bigger, I would be fine with that. And with the Padres looking at Larnach now, it would really have to take a lot of someone to want to trade those away.
Fair enough.
Yeah, the Padres Larnach thing is interesting, and Morajone hasn't been sent anywhere, right?
No,
I
he hasn't.
think he's been mostly untouchable.
Yep.
Yeah.
He and Miller, I think it would take a pretty penny, certainly far more than Trevor Larnach. Maybe he'd be part of a deal, of course, and you would pair that with some good prospect capital going the other way. He is a friend of the podcast here, Cody Schoenman. He is a big fan of Morejon, and I think that would be a big get. It'd be a big price to pay, though, for sure. We've seen Trevor Larnach linked to the San Diego Padres today a little bit. Curious to see if that one goes through the net before the buzzer here. Sherry, you've been trying to trade Trevor Larnach for going on 3-4 years now. Is it time?
No.
Is it time for? Okay.
I liked him this season. So bad.
He's having a
to
great
say.
year, having a career
He
year.
is. And I would struggle with it simply because Buck is hurt, right? And Keishel, he's getting it. But he and Martin still make a lot of mistakes, and I've been so impressed with Larnach this offseason with his changes to his wrist and his, hold and everything that he's working on to get not only his velocity up, but his launch angle. And I would hate to see, this is the first year, I would hate to see him go, oh, stop it.
Sherry once tried to put Trevor out to pasture on an episode of the Twins Off Daily podcast.
For me, it's his bat and his defense. I think it would be really hard to replace that. So maybe one more year, but I don't know.
I think the thing that struck me about the Trevor Larnach deal, I won't even say rumor, but the deal that was done with him was going to be we're hurting our roster, but we're helping our roster. I don't think we're going to see a deal for Larnach where we're getting prospects back for Larnach. And that made sense when you were trading a bat for it's easy to justify trading a bat for a big arm. And Brea's a big arm. He's Hoffman level kind of performance over those last couple months. And you can do that and then say, and we'll backfill it. We've got we got Walker Jenkins waiting in the wings. Yep. You can also just now take a look and go, we could still have room for Walker Jenkins on this team right now. Buck is hurt. And if the rumors about them being in on Varsho are any kind of indicator, they don't have necessarily a ton of confidence in whether or not when Buxton is going to be ready to return to this lineup. Yeah. So, I think we might get to see Walker Jenkins one way or the other. Okay. And I don't think you necessarily need to make room for Walker Jenkins by trading away Trevor Larnach, because they've got room.
Sure. Yep.
Tristan Gray.
Trevor Larnach popular name to maybe be moved in the offseason. He's due one more year of club control here, of arbitration, probably going to make probably in the neighborhood of $8-9 million.
I think less than that. That's a big raise, but maybe he's had that kind of a year. He's probably worth it. Yeah.
Regardless, they obviously couldn't get very much, or at least the price that they wanted, in the offseason. I'm curious what his value is at now after having such a successful year so far. If they do think, okay, if we're going to get anything for him, now is the time. Now is the time, as much as it would hurt the top of the lineup here. I'm curious to see if the trade deadline, price premium pushes them over the finish line with the Trevor Larnach deal.
It's always tricky to evaluate somebody when they're sort of at their peak of their year too.
Right.
Like 134 OPS plus I don't think we've seen much higher than that from Trevor Larnach at any point in 2026. Let's see where he is come the end of September.
Sure thing. Just updating the trade rumor mill here. Guardians are acquiring Nathaniel Lowe. And let's see. The Diamondbacks are acquiring outfielder Lars Nootbaar. I'm curious. We have officially hit 5 p.m. We've hit the deadline. Teams have put their shots up. Let's see what deals are announced over the next 10-15 minutes or so. It was around this time last year at the trade deadline that the Twins shipped off Louis Varland in a very surprise move, I thought. We saw a big exodus from the Twins bullpen with all those moves, but we kind of thought, okay, at least they have Louis Varland to anchor things. Turns out they decided to trade that anchor. So very, very curious. I wonder what moves are made here. Do we see a big surprise? Do we see a Louis Varland level trade happening with the Minnesota Twins to be announced here?
I mean, Neto's still sitting out there.
Sure. Yeah.
Yep. I think if you're going to see a move right now, it's going to be big.
Okay.
I don't think we're going to. I think we're going to be something that we're going to be like, okay, we've been waiting for this, and then finally somebody gave in, but. I think I'd be surprised if we. I think the shopping is done, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they got their two big arms. One, I mean, Hoffman is arguably this team's new closer, right?
Right.
Mm-hmm. The Padres just got Casey Mize from the Dodgers.
Interesting.
Hold on. Okay. All right.
From the
Dodgers?
Tigers.
From the Tigers.
From the Tigers. It's a long day, John.
Casey Mize going to San Diego. Preller makes another move here. Casey Mize, very interesting. I'm curious to see what the return is going to be. He's had a pretty good year, but he's been hurt a few different times. Some of the underlying numbers for Casey Mize under the hood have been concerning. He's still, former all-star pitcher. He's former first overall pick. Tigers, very curious.
What the hell are the Tigers doing?
Yeah, calling it,
They've
guess.
given up.
I believe they're what,
calling
2.5
it at 5
games?
minutes to 5? Like you've got Gleyber Torres still on your roster, guys. Like if you're
Here we go. Another move. Kirby Yates going to the Pirates. The Pirates making a lot of moves for relief pitching. We saw them go out and get, who is it? Luke Weaver. He went to the Pirates. They also got Kirby Yates here. Very interesting moves from Pittsburgh, kind of going for it in the bullpen here. All right. While I still have you three on board here, I want to know your letter grade for the Twins deadline if we don't hear about any other moves happening. Are you pleased with what they've done? What letter grade would you give them? Sherry, let's start with you. What's the letter grade you're giving them?
We've definitely bumped up to an A-, so I'm good. If the Neto thing goes through, awesome. If it doesn't, I got Larnach.
Okay, yeah, you got your boy. That's all well and good. Lindsay, what are you thinking? What are you putting in here?
I'd go with a C, with the caveat that I want to hear what Pohlad specifically, kind of what he has to say, because there's just a part of me that almost feels like I'm glad that Kramer and Hoffman have the opportunity to impact 2027.
Okay.
But a part of me just feels like he made these deals that feel mostly meh. I mean, Hoffman has been great, but like at the end of the day, again, I just don't see the Twins make it turn. This is now like a deep playoff type of team. Like I just don't see it. And so if I get the feeling or the vibes that he kind of is just like, see, I told you I'd spend money. And then it feels like what was the motive then for making these? Was this kind of like a fake buy that we did here or what? So I'll give it a C, just because he did get guys that can also help 2027. But depending on the tone of that, it might drop down to a D or maybe up to a B.
Interesting. You're putting the ownership right at the center of this conversation, just where Twins fans like it, baby. John, how do you feel about that grade? Those letter grades? What would you give? Do you think that the Twins scratched their itches, or you think
I'm closer to Sherry than I am to Matt on this? Yes. This is what I was. First of all, I think Hoffman's a better reliever than I thought they would get. Okay. I think that already exceeded my expectations. Now, and I wasn't sure they'd pick up a starter. I thought they should, but I wasn't sure that they would pick up a starter. Now, what that means for. So in general, I guess I'm basing it a little bit on my expectations. This is not a C stuff. This is closer to a B plus or an A minus even, based on what I saw from, depending on what we see from Hoffman. And I'll say this about, this doesn't strike us as a World Series team. Well, I mean, we didn't think they were going to be a World Series team to begin with. They are what, 3 or 4? I guess 4 games back right now of the AL Central.
Sure.
There's a decent chance that the winner of the AL Central is in the ALDS. Right?
Could be.
Right? Because the AL West is terrible. Okay, so you got, if you win the AL Central, you've got a decent shot of getting a bye that first time around. And then, as bad, we keep taking a look at all these other teams competing with the Twins and saying, well, yeah, I mean, they're not very good teams, so I guess we do have a shot. Those are the teams you're going to face in the postseason too. They've already dealt pretty well with Houston. They've already dealt pretty well. They even took 2 out of 3 from the Yankees at Yankee Stadium right now. A beat-up Yankee squad that, we don't even know if Judge is going to be back there. I mean, who in the American League are you taking a look at and going, well, we can't beat them?
Yeah.
Nobody.
A lot is going to depend on the trajectory over the next couple of months here. Of course, I think the biggest development for the Minnesota Twins is how fast and how effective they can get Byron Buxton back into the fold. Without him, it's an uphill battle for sure. There's a few guys.
I'll add Joe Ryan and Taj Bradley to that list.
I was going to say, I think Joe Ryan might even be a bigger story for me.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah, we'll see what happens here. You three, thank you so much for joining. Great work as always. I'm going to get the co-hosts back onto the stage here to talk about some of these buzzer-beating deals. But again, thank you, all 3 of you, for joining. We'll talk to you next time.
Nice job, Luke. Bye.
Thank you.
See you later.
Yep.
All right. Oh, here I am alone on stage. Brock, any buzzer beaters that you want to announce here? We'll bring Mitch back into the fold here too.
Nope, I haven't seen anything, but I've been mired in video hell for a couple minutes here. So,
your favorite spot? We announced Pirates acquiring Kirby Yates. The Rockies traded Victor Vodnik to the Marlins. He was a popular trade candidate for teams looking for bullpen help from the Rockies. Dan Hayes announced that the Twins are done. That is the extent of their moves.
Okay, so no Neto, which honestly, I'm cool with the Twins not going in on Neto. I'm not a huge fan of Neto, especially with Kalen Culpepper and Merrick Houston not all that far away. I don't know. I'm not enamored with Neto, and I don't like the price the Twins paid for the Hoffman deal. As a person who monitors a Blue Jays site, Hoffman was real bad for a while there. Like he was just giving up moonshot after moonshot. Yeah. And he's been a lot better recently. But he did it last year too. He's a really volatile reliever. And when things go bad, things tend to go pretty bad. But we just did a ton of Twins talk. I don't need to rehash that. Sure. I really like what the Padres did here. I haven't found out what they gave up for Mize. I should say that first, because if Ethan Salas is in the deal for Mize, that's brutal. But
yeah, I wonder with someone like Salas, a little bit Do they have any sort of prospect freezer burn on him? He's been atop their list for a long time here. Young catchers, they can go either way. Salas would be a steep price to pay for Casey Mize specifically.
Yeah, I don't
He's
think
not part of the reported deal, by the way.
Okay, good.
Ken Rosenthal said
Cash Mayfield and Jackson Wolf.
Jackson Wolf. Yep.
Okay. That's an interesting swap.
Yeah, I didn't think Mize would be enough to pull Salas, but Salas, he had a really bad injured 2025, but is he even 20 yet? I'm not sure. And he's a defensive whiz. Like he only has freezer burn because he entered baseball so young. Like he's still extremely young, especially for a catcher. And yeah, there's Owen chiming in about Hoffman. Jays fans don't love him.
No.
But Salas is an extraordinary prospect. It's just, it feels like he's been around for so long that you're like, oh, how good is he really? But he was injured last year. He's rebounding. He's in Double-A. Now, let me see. Ethan Salas is... he just turned 20.
Okay.
So, he's, a year and a half younger than Von Lackey, who the Twins just drafted. And he is, maybe the bat doesn't profile as highly as Lackey, but, the defense is way up there. So, I'm glad to hear that AJ Preller, against his, base instincts, it really took a lot for him to hold on to his top prospect today.
Zach Neto and Reed Detmers staying with the Angels. Are we surprised that they didn't make a move for one of those guys? I know they sent out Joe Adell. Soriano also found his way to Toronto. Are we surprised that they didn't cash in on Reed Detmers or Zach Neto at this deadline?
Are we surprised by anything the Angels do? Honestly, I mean, I totally get why the Angels don't want to move everybody, but it's a little bit surprising to me that they would hold on to Detmers and trade Soriano.
Yes.
Because I do that the other way around.
Yeah.
But, and then they also traded O'Hoppe, which they had down on, quite a bit. So, the Angels always 1 foot in, out the door, 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and never really dedicate either way. And, it used to be a running joke that, Angels are going to have 78 wins this year. They haven't been able to come close to that in the last few years. And I hope this new front office can do something with that team. But as long as Artie Moreno owns it, I don't have much faith.
Mitch, as a Cubs guy, and we heard some reported rumors of Reed Detmers possibly going to the Cubs. Are you surprised to see that he wasn't moved at all?
No, not surprised. I was nodding my head with everything that Brock just said. But I feel like years past, working trades out with the Angels can be like pulling teeth. And if I'm an Angels fan, the one thing I'm frustrated with is commit to something. Like commit to a full-on rebuild, or commit to, hey, let's, not this year, but let's have an off season where we go a little bit crazy and try to add and see where, the AL West up for grabs. It's not like anyone's running away with that division this year with like an incredible record. It just, every year I feel like the trade deadline comes and goes. And when I look team by team and I come across the Angels, more times than not, it's almost like uncertainty. It's the inability to commit to going in one direction. I don't know. If I were an Angels fan, at some point, I feel like I would just be like, just blow it up and restart from scratch instead of, well, we trade Soriano, but we keep Reed Detmers. And I don't know. I'd be frustrated if I were an Angels fan. I was literally nodding. Brock was like stealing the words from my mouth because I was like, yes, this is exactly how I feel every single year about the Angels when the trade deadline comes about. They're just non-committal to taking the path to the left or the right. They just try to stay right down the middle. And I feel like if you're an organization that operates that way, you're going to be in purgatory for a really long time.
Yeah.
It really makes me think that Artie Moreno is an S-tier meddler. And because we've seen it over so many front offices now where they just never really, pull it together and, make the big move in either direction. And it really makes me think that Artie Moreno is the culprit behind it. And it's really unfortunate for Angels fans. I used to live right I used to work right next to Angel Stadium, and when they won in 2002, and that franchise had a hell of a run in the 2000s, and boy, Artie Moreno has just sucked the life out of that fan base, which is too bad.
It is too bad. It'd be fun to see them get back to being a competitive product with Mike Trout still in the fold there, instead of just him and a bunch of guys that they draft in the first round and call up by September the same year.
What do you like? What I don't want to harp on it too much, but I was thinking about it more. Like, what if you're what are you excited about if you're an Angels fan for the net? Like, what Trout's not getting any younger. Obviously, he's been the pillar, the face of that franchise, and battled injuries, certainly the last few years. But, man, usually with a lot of these teams and situations that are in kind of these rough patches, you can, find an outlet where it's like, man, this gives me some optimism. This gives me, some reason to have a little bit, even a glimmer of hope. And with the Angels, it just seems like, I don't want to go as far as to say like incompetence, but again, just the fact that they just always just right down the middle and they never, take a drastic step one way or the other. I'd have a hard time finding ways to be optimistic if I were an Angels fan when I zoom out the microscope and look at 2027, 2028, because I don't know, it just seems like a repeated story with them.
Yeah, it really is. And
that's fair. And it's like, maybe it's not fair to judge them based on moves from 10, 15 years ago, but we saw them make some big splashes in free agency in terms of bringing in Albert Pujols to a record contract at the time, Josh Hamilton, these kind of big names at the time in free agency. And it's like, maybe if they could just be a little smarter with some of the swaps they make, maybe the trade deadline is a good time to do that, given the premium that teams have to pay at the deadline for some of these assets. Yeah, curious to see what happens with the Angels here. All right, guys, how about this? I think we're probably done announcing moves. What was your maybe favorite move that you saw just from a league-wide standpoint, whether that be that it was surprising or that it was just a perfect fit? Do any stand out to you from this trade season that you're like, ooh, that's going to be interesting to watch for sure? To me, Adley Rutschman to the Red Sox could be a lot of fun. I'm not a fan of the Red Sox or anything by any means, but adding him to that team at this point in the season and after the run that they've gone on, I think that was a lot of fun to see roll across the headlines here.
That was going to be mine, but I would add the caveat of the Yankees kind of surprised me by not adding more bats. I know they got Ramos from the Giants and they got Garcia from the Nationals, but that's an offense that's been pretty dreadful. And I know they're missing Judge and Bellinger and Stanton.
Sure.
But even with those guys back, that left side of the infield, when you talk about from a batting lineup perspective of Volpe and Caballero and Ryan McMahon, it's kind of like a big gray area spot for them. And then at catcher, they have gotten next to nothing from Austin Wells and other catchers that they've rolled out this year. And just a couple days ago, the reports were, hey, the Yankees are going to be, super aggressive in going after a catcher. And I know, from a Twins perspective, Ryan Jeffers was a name that was floated out there, but Adley Rutschman was another one that was linked. And it almost seemed like when I was just following some of the Yankee circles and just listening to what reporters were saying, it was almost like a foregone conclusion, guys, that the Yankees are going to add a catcher. They're going to add a catcher. And I think Boston to swoop in and take who was apparently a target to some capacity from the Yankees. It's hard to view Boston as anything else but a winner. The one layer of it, though, is that's if they're able to work out an extension with Adley Rutschman, because I don't think you give up what they gave up and then watch him walk after 2027. I think then it'd be like a pretty tough pill to swallow. But on the surface, if they get an extension done, I love that move for Boston. And if you just want to pour salt into the wound, we might not ever find out to what degree, but there is some level of wondering if they, plucked him away from the Yankees, which makes it that much more sweet for a Boston fan.
To add insult to injury on that is it's in our Slack now that it appears the Red Sox and the Mets were right on the finish line for a deal for catcher Luis Torrens right at the buzzer, and they just couldn't get it done. So the Red Sox almost took both catchers from the Yankees. But you wonder if they just tied it up long enough that the Yankees didn't get involved.
Very interesting. Any names that you guys are really, really surprised did not get moved? You brought up Ryan Jeffers. I think the rating was kind of on the wall that the Twins were planning to keep him. That would be one that would bring up. Any other names that you're like, oh, I'm very surprised that this person was not moved after all the rumors going around?
Yeah, I mean, the Astros, the fact that they just didn't move anybody, I was kind of surprised by that. But you know, they are buying, which, you know, makes sense in the really kind of pathetic American League. But you know, there's a handful of guys. Let's see, the Padres didn't move anybody out of their bullpen, which I found
that was surprising. Yep.
I really thought, you know, Morhone or, you know, outside chance of Miller. But, you know, the Padres kept their bullpen intact, which is really surprising. And then they somehow picked up 2 starters, which is pretty fun. It's fun being a fan of a Preller team, man. It just is. It's a wild ride.
Yeah, it's always a wild ride. And if you're a fan of Preller, please make sure to follow Padres Mission, following all the action that he goes through. Guys, any final words here? Any last thoughts before we try to land this plane? It's been a fun couple of hours, that's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I would just say, you know, from a Cubs perspective, went out and added quantity and quality with the arms. Didn't necessarily get the controllable starter, but you got a controllable bullpen piece. I'm fascinated by the thoughts of, you know, who could be in that rotation for the playoffs, and who could be coming out of the bullpen. You know, you only got so many slots for a starting rotation, but you bring in Kevin Gossman, you bring in Clay Holmes. I'm pretty happy with what the Cubs did. Now, I know they paid a price to get Clay Holmes, but I think an underrated part of that trade too is bringing in Tyrone Taylor, because, you know, Jason and I have talked for weeks on the podcast. I'm sure you guys are aware of it to some degree. The Cubs, you know, the bench, they don't have anyone that can, you know, right now come in and hit lefties. And if you look at Tyrone Taylor's splits against lefties, it's pretty good. And it kind of leads you down a road where maybe if there's a lefty on the mound down this stretch run, maybe he gets, you know, spot starts over Ian Happ or whoever, because his splits are that good against lefties. So, you know, the trade with the Mets, the biggest piece that'll be talked about is Clay Holmes, but I think getting Tyrone Taylor for your benches is an intriguing part of it too.
Okay.
I'm happy with what the Cubs did. I'm not like over the moon, like, oh my gosh, they won the deadline, they are the clear winners. But I'm happy with what the Cubs did. They were aggressive and they were able to manufacture multiple trades to get better. I mean, I didn't even talk about like the Cubs possibly adding bats in the last few weeks. It was just arms, and that's what they did.
Yeah.
So I would have to believe they think they executed their blueprint to some level.
Cool. All right, Brock, any big winners, big losers on your end?
Yeah, I like what the Padres did. I like what the Cubs did. You know, the Cubs didn't get Detmers like it really seemed like they were going to for a minute there. And boy, they really had a lot of people chasing their tail on that one, including us. Like we really thought Detmers was a done deal, as did a bunch of people. But they pivoted just fine. I think Holmes was a decent follow-up. I'm not in love with the price they paid for Holmes and Taylor, but you know, the Cubs have a good enough farm system. They can weather that sort of thing. They can lose a Rojas without it being the end of the world.
Yeah, fair enough. You know what? I'm going to say that Twins fans are winners here because they didn't have to see yet another red wedding at the trade deadline, axing all of their players. That's been a fun little push for them. All right,
I'm
Mitch,
a little bit real quick. I'm a little bit surprised. The Guardians went in way more than I expected them to.
That's true. Yeah, they did. Like, you know, no superstar players necessarily, but some really good role players that are going to be an interesting fit for their team that is always dangerous, and as they pursue another playoff chase here. All right. Well, this was a ton of fun, guys. I had a blast talking some ball with you. I hope we get to do this again next year. Everybody, please make sure you go follow Mitch's work over at Northside Baseball. Does a great job there. Brock, thanks as always for being the man in the chair. You did a killer job. Thank you, everybody who joined in the live chat and who joined us over the last couple of hours. Please make sure to stay tuned in on all the Diamond-centric sites, even post-deadline here, as we ourselves make a push for the postseason.
There's going to be so many articles on every site. Like tomorrow's email is going to be like 10 to 15 pieces per site. It's just absurd. Like the amount of transactions and everything that happened today were nuts.
Right on. Well, hey, thank you again, everybody. We will be back soon. Until then, stay sweet.